Bao Taiyang only felt a powerful force coming, and his whole body was directly sent flying upside down by the person wearing the bamboo hat. It fell on the courtyard wall behind him, making an extremely heavy muffled sound. Puff. A mouthful of blood spat out from his mouth. At this moment, Bao Taiyang only felt that his internal organs seemed to be displaced, and there was no pain anywhere. It hurts. Can't help screaming. This person dared to hit him, it is really unforgivable. Master, master. Several big men who had been crowding around Bao Taiyang also changed their complexions at this moment, and hurried over to help Bao Taiyang up. With the help of his subordinates, Hoi Taio barely stood up. Feeling the pain in his body, a powerful resentment arose in his heart unconsciously. This person hit me? Gimme. Almost without hesitation, he gave instructions to the tall and burly subordinates around him. These subordinates of his are all ruthless characters that his father found for him. It may be impossible to fight 10 with 1, but it is easy to fight 3 with 1. Kill. Without hesitation, the big men threw their fists at Sumyu. However, I almost didn't see how Sumyu made a move. These big men also came and went quickly, and they were shot flying out just like Bao Taiyang. Seeing this, Bao Taiyang's face suddenly turned pale, and he realized that he might have encountered a hard stubble. Sumyu walked slowly towards Bao Taiyang. And as Sumyu stepped in step by step, Bao Taiyang felt his heart beating a little bit disappointingly. It was a feeling of fear and panic. At this moment, somewhat regretful emotions poured into my heart. The boy in the bamboo hat came to him, staring at him with golden eyes. You seem to have provoked someone who shouldn't be provoked. Plop. Almost, subconsciously knelt down. Under the bamboo hat, the ghost-like eyes made Bao Taiyang feel like his heart was about to jump out of fright. Those ghostly, frightening eyes. Sumyu patted Bao Taiyang's shoulder with his palm, and indistinctly, an invisible force poured into Bao Taiyang's body, and finally reached the heart to hide. Like a ticking time bomb, it could explode at any moment. What is certain is that he will not live long. Makomo, come here. What? Surprised, Makomo came to Suemu's side instinctively and obediently. Hoi Taio is also a little strange. Now, why is this boy wearing a bamboo hat suddenly calling Makomo? But, right away, he saw that the boy stretched out his hand and grabbed Makomo at once. All of a sudden, he embraced the slender waist of this beauty. I'm jealous, such a delicate, innocent and beautiful girl. Caught in his arms. She is mine. Sumyu said softly, as if he was speaking to Hoi Taio, and also as if he was speaking to those around who coveted Makomo's beauty. Next second, he clenched his fist violently and slammed the hammer on the ground in front of Hoi Taio. Boom. The ground shook like an earthquake, and a huge pothole was punched out by that person. Human bravery has reached such an inhuman level. As that human being. Seeing this terrifying force, some people around who still coveted it felt cold sweat dripping from their foreheads. At this moment, almost no one dares to spy on Makomo anymore. The world seems to be a lot cleaner all of a sudden. And as the peeping eyes on her disappeared, Makomo suddenly felt a lot more relaxed. Seeing the averted gazes around, Suemu's mouth turned cold. In any era, strength is always the most important thing. As it seemed that there was no one without eyes looking for trouble, Sumyu finally set his sights on the girl in his arms. Makomo's body. Pretty ugly girl. Naturally, he let go, and Makomo stood beside him with his head down. His immature and charming face turned red at this moment, as if it was about to burn. You must be joking just now, right? Makomo whispered. Feeling my heart beating a little faster, I thought of Sumyu pointing at her domineeringly and saying, she is mine. Makomo's skin felt hot. Not shy. How dare he say such bold words, and in front of so many people. It's just so shy. I really want to find a hole to drill into. Looking at Makomo, who lowered his head and asked him in a low voice, Sumyu couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. Makomo, are you so shy? Are you too shy? What are you kidding? I never joke. Sumyu stared at Makomo very naturally. Who told me to like you, so I want to take you as my own. In an instant, the girl's face was almost flushed with blood. He. How dare he say such bold words? The small mouth opened unconsciously, and the eyes, which were as beautiful as jewels, almost closed in shame at this moment. Mujong, please don't tease Makomo. Makomo pulled Suemu's clothes carefully with her small hands. These days, she has a general understanding of Suemu's character, and her mouth always speaks untidy words. Before, when he was in Kyogiriyama, he often heard Suemu say some nasty things to Kochu Shinobu, and every time he teased Ms. Shinobu her little face turned red. At that time, she was nearby and looked quite cheerful. Now, it's time to start treating yourself. Makomo felt that he couldn't bear it. It was so embarrassing. Such bold words. How can you say it casually? What if a girl takes it seriously? Seeing that Makomo really couldn't stand it, Suemu couldn't help but smile, hee, and shrugged his shoulders naturally. Okay, I won't tease you just now. What? Is it true or not? Makomo blinked blankly, but a sense of loss suddenly appeared in his heart. What he said just now was so sincere, how could it be false all of a sudden? However, if Makomo takes it seriously, so can I. Suemu looked at Makomo with a smile. After all, Zhenjiang is so cute. I really like it. Jiang, please don't joke like this, he said in a voice almost like an ant's wings flapping its wings. It is good. Suemu patted Makomo's little head, and then looked at the sky. Now, our task is to wander around this town, he said softly. Hidden in the town, the ghost who likes to devour the delicate body of young girls, if he sees Makomo, it may be difficult to give up such a beautiful girl. Okay. Makomo nodded obediently, and followed Suemu like a little daughter-in-law. His little head was also lowered. Sometimes, he would raise his head and look at the boy's eyes, but when the boy's eyes looked over, there was immediately look away like a thief. Suemu also felt Makomo's strangeness, and suddenly felt that she seemed to be making a big fuss. He suddenly realized that the cliched words that were regarded as jokes in his place may be easily taken seriously in this conservative world, especially at the age of innocent girls like Makomo. Himself, at this age, has the most pure yearning for the other half. The most sincere, but also the most simple feelings. Once it has really picked up, the flame will burn more and more vigorously, until it finally extinguishes itself. And this kind of girl is the least to be easily provoked, and the least to be let down. As the night gradually darkened, Suemu and Makomo, who had wandered around the town, also found an inn in the town to stay. Inside the house a lamp is lit. Makomo sat on the bed nervously, looking up from time to time. On the beam of the house, Suemu leaned quietly on the pillar, and her breath was restrained. If she hadn't seen it with her eyes, she might not have known that there was a person here, and she didn't emit any breath. Do you think Naue will come tonight? Makomo's voice is obviously a little nervous. Although he is not afraid of ghosts, but when facing ghosts for the first time, deep down in his heart, he is always nervous. Do not know. Suemu answered very simply. He was confident that he should be able to attract the attention of the swamp ghost, but he was not sure whether the other party would come. Okay. Makomo muttered. The night was getting darker and darker, and Makomo couldn't stand it any longer. He had already traveled around the town for a day during the day, and he was already exhausted. Now, lying on the soft bed in the inn, he wanted to sleep a long time ago. The star-like eyes glanced at Fang Liang, and he felt a little embarrassed that there was a man nearby. Go to bed first, I'm here, don't worry. Okay. Makomo nodded, put his clothes on and lay down. His face was still hot and shy. It's just that the sleepiness is getting stronger and stronger, and the eyelids are getting heavier and heavier. Really going to bed? On the beam, looking at Makomo who had fallen asleep, Suemu leaned on the pillar, holding the sword, silently vigilant. The night is getting darker and darker, and the world seems to be getting more and more silent. At this moment, Suemu, who had remained motionless on the beam, opened her eyes suddenly, and a golden light flashed out. The breath of ghost emerged. Sure enough, that ghost couldn't bear the desire for the fresh girl's young flesh. He whispered softly. As far as the eyes can see, a black shadow slowly moves under the sun. Is this the blood ghost technique? Suemu murmured slightly as he watched the thing that escaped into the ground, leaving only a black shadow on the ground. Blood ghost art. Different from the immortal ability and strange power of ordinary ghosts, some ghosts will have some special abilities on their bodies, and the stronger ghosts will even show a variety of ghost arts, and a few ghosts use their own blood as medium mobilization ability. True. Gu, Suemu shouted softly. Makomo, who was sleeping in Zhengshang, suddenly turned over like a carp, and his slender figure jumped up like a bird. And as Makomo jumped up, a black shadow shrouded the bed where Makomo was staying just now, and the bed was completely sucked into the ground. Watching this scene, Makomo's fair face flashed with dignity. The teacher once taught that ghosts are divided into strong and weak. Small ghosts only rely on their own physical strength to attack humans. If you just get rid of the ghost's terrible recovery ability, such ghosts are no different from wild animals in the final analysis. On the other hand, ghosts that are strong enough can use various supernatural powers to burst out with unpredictable strength. This ability is called vampirism. Obviously, the ghost in front of him is a ghost that can use the blood ghost technique. Such a ghost is not easy to deal with. It seemed that the surprised prey ran away, and a vicious man with ghost horns on his head floated up from the underground swamp. It ran away. The swamp ghost looked at Makomo, who was already standing on the beam, in surprise. At the same time, he also noticed Su-Mu, who was leaning on the pillar and holding the sword. In just a split second, he understood. I was seduced by these two people's designs. His eyes first turned to Makomo. This is a very delicate girl, it must be delicious to eat. But immediately, he turned his attention to Su-Mu again, with a slight sense of strangeness. There is a faint breath of a ghost too? He was a little uncertain. After all, if it was really a ghost, how could it be with humans? At this moment, the information of this ghost appeared in Su-Mu's eyes. Name: Kazuma Yaya. Ghost level: Evolution Ghost. Abilities: Immortality, Bad, Burrow, Swamp, Split. Cons: Photophobia, Wisteria, Curse, from Kibutsuji Muzan, Nichiren Blades. This is all the information about the ghost in front of me. Mu. This ghost doesn't look easy to deal with. Makomo held the hilt of his sword with his hand, and his pretty face was full of dignity. Ghosts who can use vampirism are generally very strong. Nothing. He looked at Makomo, and replied lightly. Damn. What a stupid brat. Although the male body is not very tasty, but today, it should be added to the meal. The swamp ghost licked his tongue. With a cold snort, almost instantly, Su-Mu drew his saber and slashed. Boom. The ground shook, and he cut a hole in the place where the swamp ghost stayed just now. Did you escape into the ground? Watching this scene, he raised eyebrows slightly. Next, a black shadow appeared on a wall, and then a ghost figure suddenly appeared, and a ghost grabbed him with claws and teeth. Choke. A sword shadow flashed, and a ghost hand fell to the ground. At the same moment, the black shadow floating on the wall also fled towards the distance. Ah! Seeing this scene, Su-Mu sneered, holding the Nichiren blades, and slashed at the place where the shadow was. The ground shook, accompanied by a faint scream. Part. In the distance, the ground shook away, and a ghost was directly shaken out from the ground. Do not to be precise, it should be 3 ghosts. One ghost, turned into 3 ghosts, hateful. Ghost roaring. This guy is no ordinary person. It's surprisingly fast, and it's also surprisingly strong. It's not like a human being at all, more like a ghost. It's over. He looked at the swamp ghost and smiled. Hey. Hateful. The swamp ghost roared and let out an angry roar. At this moment, Su-Mu has already pressed his hand on the hilt of the sword again. Draw the knife. Cut with an extremely quick sword strike, the figure of the young man and the 3 ghosts passed by. Behind them, the 3 ghosts were still roaring angrily. Then, 3 hot heads fell to the ground. Tick-tock. Blood is also flowing from the blades of the Nichiren blades at this moment. Accompanied by the flow of blood, the 3 heads that fell on the ground also turned into wisps of black smoke and dissipated. Together with their bodies, they disappeared without a trace in an instant. With the corpses gone, what followed was an unpleasant stench. Amazing. Next to him, Jengu's eyes could not help but brighten. Ghosts with blood ghost skills were easily killed by Su-Mu. And as the swamp ghost was beheaded, a cold and emotionless mechanical voice rose in his mind. Ding. Congratulations to the host. Kill a ghost, and gain the ability to hide. Dungeon. You can escape into the ground and walk underground, just like on land. It lasts for half an hour, and it will be forced to stop when attacked by external forces. A crisp voice sounded in his mind. At this moment, Su-Mu had a feeling in his heart that as long as he had a thought, he could drill into the ground. This is an ability of the swamp ghost just now, and now, with his beheading, this ability is owned by him. Not bad. The corner of his mouth could not help but glow with joy. This is a very practical ability. Mu, you are so strong. Makomo came to Su-Mu, raised his head, looked at Su-Mu. Just now, before it was her turn to make a move, Su-Mu had already dealt with it. He was being too careless. Su-Mu shook his head. If the swamp ghost hadn't been too careless, he wouldn't have easily killed him. After all, having mastered the 2 abilities of escaping and swamping, he is definitely very strong in escaping. Even so, Mu is very strong. Makomo shook his head. It's not nearly enough. Sumu is not satisfied, his strength is still far behind. Moreover, later on, this ghost can even deal with Tanjiro in the early stage. After all, in the early stage of anime, Tanjiro's strength cannot even beat the bottom string. It can be seen that this swamp ghost is very weak. Killing a weak ghost is really nothing to be proud of. Picking up the map, Sumu looked for the next suspected ghost place again. This place is not far from here, it is a minister of mountains near the city. Come on. Let's go to the next place. He looks at Makomo. Now he wants to collect as many ghost abilities as possible. Every time he collects an ability, his own strength will almost increase to a certain extent. It is good. Makomo nodded obediently, with excitement in his eyes. Out of town come to the mountain's lush woods, nocturnal creatures. This is a completely different world from the daytime. Sumu and Makomo are walking. It's a little different from the daytime world. Makomo looked at the scene. It's better to go to Sha Wushan. Sumu turned her head and looked at Makomo. My hometown is always a place where people look forward to and feel at ease. Yes, Shawu Mountain is where I grew up. How about the place on Wulu Road is very good in my heart. Makomo nodded, then turned his head and looked at Sumu curiously. I don't know where your hometown is. The girl tilted her head, her eyes were bent into crescent moons, and her delicate face was full of curiosity. Hometown. It's been a long time since I mentioned it. Sumu raised her head and looked up at the bright moon in the sky, may never go back. I suddenly feel a little lonely in my heart after all. He originally lived well in that world, but suddenly came to this world. In order to survive, he had to become a ghost. Makomo looked at Sumu with good-looking eyes, and could feel a touch of emotion emanating from Sumu. I think, Mew, must be a person with a lot of stories. It's just that I don't know if I will tell this story to Makomo one day. She was about to ask something, but Sumu stopped suddenly, and really followed Suemu's pace, and accidentally bumped into Suemu's back. Touching his little sore nose, Makomo looked at Sumu with some complaints. Only immediately Makomo didn't feel right. Suemu's gaze became cold. There is a situation. Immediately such an association emerged. Maybe there is a ghost? She also became nervous all of a sudden, her hand involuntarily pressed on the hilt of the sword at her waist. Sumu raised his head, and the breath of the ghost was in front of him, and he could faintly feel it. Walk. He whispered, and there was a hint of excitement in his eyes, but he didn't know what kind of ability he could get this time. Some look forward to it. Deep in the mountains, although it is far away from towns, it is not without people. In the middle of the mountain, a house cliff appeared in front of my eyes. And at this moment 2 figures came one after another and landed among the trees. Before they got to the room, Sumu and Makomo could already smell blood. Apparently, ghosts have started eating people. Hurry up, Wei should already be eating people. Smelling the smell of blood, Suemu's golden eyes flashed a little coldness, and almost without saying a word, he quickly walked towards the house. Makomo also hurriedly followed, but, looking at the back in front of him, his pretty eyes were full of doubts. If it is correct, Mew should be a ghost, right? Why, a ghost is worried about humans. Can't figure it out. What Makomo doesn't know is that Sumu is not a ghost of this world, unlike the ghosts of this world. Even if you become a ghost, you still focus on your own thoughts, although sometimes you will be affected by ghost instincts. For example, the body instinctively likes the night and hates the day. However, thinking, cognition, everything is still based on oneself. As a human being before, the natural thought is still human thinking. When thinking about things, even ghosts sometimes inevitably substitute human thinking. Therefore, when ghosts eat people, they inevitably stand on the side of humans. The door was pushed open, there was blood, the corpse's stumps were scattered on the ground, a head rolled down at the door, and Tianchao could vaguely see the horror, fear, and pain from the eyes of the head. With all kinds of negative emotions, one can imagine what kind of scene this person has experienced in front of him. Under the bamboo hat, the boy's golden eyes flashed a touch of coldness. Damn it. Makomo gritted his teeth, his pretty face had long been replaced by anger. Shepherd, Makomo couldn't help but look up. Find it. Seemingly sensing Makomo's intentions, Sumu nodded. The blood still had a trace of temperature, proving that the man-eating ghost hadn't gone far. The night is so dark. On the path between the mountains, a hideous humanoid creature was dragging a corpse that was bleeding continuously. The smell of blood spread suddenly, as if sensing something, the humanoid creature suddenly raised its head, with a cruel smile in its eyes. Someone is here again, although he is already full, but he doesn't intend to save a meal. As he spoke, there was faint fleshy foam falling from the gap between the teeth on his mouth. Rustling. Accompanied by a figure that seemed to be blown by the wind, two people appeared in front of the humanoid creature and stopped him. A boy wearing a hat. A girl wearing a fox mask. It seems that they came here specifically to find me? Looking at the two, the humanoid grinned and showed a cruel smile. I'm looking for a ghost specifically? Do you want to be eaten by me? Specially looking for a ghost? Do you want to be eaten by me? The ghost put down the blood-stained corpse, and walked towards Sumiu and Makomo. The blood-stained fangs were exposed, shining ferociously in the moonlight. The blood-red eyes fell on Makomo. Although the fox mask obscures it, one can feel that this is a very beautiful girl. Of course, beauty is only of ornamental value when it comes to food. What really fascinates me is how tender this body is. The white skin, under the eyes, exudes a smoothness like fat. With such a body, the meat is absolutely tender and smooth. He licked his tongue unconsciously, and already felt the amazing sensuality. Let me eat you, I will enjoy you well. The ghost grinned his teeth, revealing incomparable greed on his ferocious face. It's really a ghost that can't see the situation clearly. Seeing the ghost that kept coming, Sumiu murmured slightly, and the information of this ghost clearly appeared in the eyes under the bamboo hat at this moment. Name: Zhong Mori Ryota Ghost Level, Elementary Ghost, Primary Ghost, Evolution Ghost, Lower String, Upper String, Ancestor of Ghost. Ability: Immortality, Bad, Cons, Photophobia, Wisteria, Curse, from Kibutsuji Muzan, Nichiren Blades. Seeing the ghost's message, the golden eyes were slightly disappointed. An ordinary ghost with no abilities. Give it to you. He took a step back and looked at Makomo. For a ghost with even abilities, he really had no desire to do anything. Clear. The girl nodded, and the pair of beautiful eyes under the fox mask with flower patterns revealed an excited look at this moment. This is her first time fighting a ghost. His eyes fell on the ghost on the opposite side. Wearing a torn cloth, the exposed skin is very thick. The limbs are also like pillars, physically strong. Coupled with the ferocious face, just standing still gives people a powerful deterrent. I will kill you, Makomo said softly. Roar. The ghost couldn't bear it anymore. He desperately wanted to try this delicious delicacy, so he roared like a wild animal. Then, he stepped on the ground suddenly, and the whole person rushed like a cheetah. Seeing the evil ghost rushing towards him, although Makomo was a little nervous because he was really fighting the ghost for the first time, he was still calm, and he just turned his body slightly to avoid the attack of the ghost. At the same time, lift your feet. Just with a little force, he directly kicked the ghost to the ground. Baba. The ghost got up from the ground in embarrassment, and spat out the dirt in its mouth. Little girl. The ghost was anxious and rushed over again. But soon, Makomo nimbly dodged it, and then, his arm was cut with a horrible wound by the Nichiren blades in Makomo's hand. Damn, same, don't hide, and see if I don't tear you apart. The ghost roared angrily. In the distance, Sumiu watched. This ghost is really stupid. Until now, he still can't see the situation clearly. Although Makomo may lack a lot in strength, but his speed is light and fast. Not to mention that his senior brother is not as good as her. Even Sumiu dare not say that he is worse than Makomo in this aspect. Practice your hands. Let's end it, Makomo, don't waste too much time. Sumiu stood in the distance with folded arms, and said softly. It is good. Makomo raised his head, blowing with the wind. The girl's hair was blown up by the wind, and under the slight moonlight, she looked extraordinarily beautiful. The girl's footsteps lightly tapped the ground, hand on the hilt. Water breathing. 3 shapes, flowing and dancing. Accompanied by the girl's murmur, its figure is also running at high speed like water. Because of its excessive speed, only the afterimage left by the girl's walking can be seen faintly. So fast. The evil ghost just murmured slightly, and then a beautiful sword arc across its neck. The body stiffened instantly, and he stood there blankly, with his head rolled off. The girl sheathed her sword, put it aside, raised her head, and looked at Sumiu. Solved, Mew. The girl uncovered the fox mask and showed a sweet smile. And as his words fell silent, behind him, the ghost whose head had been chopped off by Nichiren blades also turned into black smoke and completely disappeared at this moment. All that remains is the stench in the air. Well done. Sumiu nodded. This ghost is just the lowest level ghost, and has no other abilities. To be precise, he is not very strong. But Makomo can solve it so easily, which is enough to show that Makomo's current strength is already good. With Suemu's compliment, the girl's beautiful eyes also bent into a beautiful crescent shape at this moment. Let's go and bury the dead. He looked at the ground, and said softly to the corpse that had been dragged by the ghost. The smile on Makomo's face also disappeared, and he lowered his head slightly, with a hint of apology. I'm late. Suemu stepped forward and patted Makomo on the head with a smile. This is something that can't be helped. After all, they are not gods, and it is impossible to predict everything in the world. Soon, several small mounds of newly heaped earth stood in this desolate place. Rest in peace. Suemu murmured softly. May I be reborn in bliss. Makomo also folds his hands together and sends out a prayer. Gone. After Makomo finished praying, Suemu opened his mouth softly. Makomo nodded, and obediently followed behind Suemu, looking up at Suemu's back. Makomo spoke suddenly. Suemu turned her head and looked at Makomo with doubts in her golden eyes. What's wrong? He looked at Makomo, puzzled. Can I ask? How did you become a ghost? Mr. Ryotaki should have told you that it was transformed after the human body received Kibutsuji Muzan's blood. Suemu smiled. Is that the same? A ghost turned into by Kibutsuji Muzan? Asked Makomo. Suemu was slightly silent. Of course he wasn't, but he didn't want to say it. But Makomo thinks so. That Kibutsuji Muzan is really hateful. Makomo must kill him in the future. Avenge Muzan. The girl clenched her fists, with indescribable anger in her eyes. How could someone cruelly turn Miu into a ghost for such a good person as Miu? Seeing Makomo's angry look, Suemu directly stretched out his hand, lifted off Makomo's fox mask, and put the fox mask on Makomo's head. The girl's pretty face also appeared in front of him. Makomo was stunned for a moment, wondering why Miu suddenly took off her mask. Right away, Makomo figured it out. Her little face was directly pinched by Miu, and then pulled up as her own little face. The pink little face was pulled round and swollen. At this moment, Makomo's eyes were also round and round, like a lantern, and he blinked, a little at a loss. Okay, let's go. Let go of Makomo's small face, then pat Makomo on the shoulder, and then turn around and walk away. It took a while for Makomo to react, and hastily followed, with a blushing face, Miu. Makomo wants to condemn Suemu's behavior just now. It is very bad behavior. After all, she is a girl. How can she pinch Makomo's face casually? He wanted to scold the other party, but he didn't want to scold him too fiercely, for fear of frightening Miu. So he could only put on a delicate face and yelled fiercely at Suemu. Miu, you bully. Okay. Suemu, who was walking in front, turned her head, looked at Makomo who was screaming fiercely, and said indifferently, I just bullied you. What are you doing? Of course, it seems that Makomo deserves to be bullied by him. Makomo blinked, his crescent-like eyes widened at this moment. You man. How can you speak like that? How can you bully Makomo like this? Makomo is full of anger, looks like a little hamster that has eaten enough food, very cute. Why am I like this? I am not human at all. Suemu patted Makomo on the head and laughed out loud. What the hell? Makomo grumbled. It's always nice to chat with girls like Makomo, but they move on to the next suspected haunted area. Fujisayama. In the recent period, the current consciousness of the siege squad is here. Because of the illness, his body has started to deteriorate recently, and now he is so weak that he can't even swing the sword 10 times. His eyes fell on the wisteria flowers in full bloom on Mount Tang. The flowers were in full bloom at the moment. My lord, Miss Kanao is here. There was a slight sound. Okay. Yubayashiki Kagaya nodded and walked out, supported by 2 almost identical twins. Just walking out of the door, a man was wearing the uniform of the Ghost Slayer squad, covered with colorful butterfly pattern feathers, with emerald green kochu hair clips with pink edges on both sides of his hair, long black hair reaching his waist, and beautiful pink and purple eyes. The girl came over. Kanai has seen the master. Kochu Kanai bowed respectfully. Okay. Yubayashiki Kagaya nodded, and his eyes fell on Kochu Kanai. The message has been conveyed. How? Miu, willing to cooperate with us, also sent us a message about Kibutsuji Muzan. Kochu Kanai spoke softly. Yubayashiki Kagaya was very sensitive to the change in Kochu Kanai's attitude towards the ghost this time. Last time, when Kochu Kanai called the ghost, he used the title of ghost, but this time, he used the more human-friendly title of Miu. While curious about what caused Kochu Kanae's change in attitude towards the ghost, Yubayashiki Kagaya is now more interested in hearing about Kibutsuji Muzan.
What news? Miu told me. Kibutsuji Muzan can change his appearance at will, sometimes as a man, sometimes as a woman, sometimes as an adult, sometimes as a child.
Hearing Kochu Kanae's words, Yubayashiki Kagaya frowned involuntarily and sighed involuntarily. The trace of Kibutsuji Muzan was already hard to find, but now, with this ability, there is a vast sea of people, how to find it. But, immediately, Yubayashiki Kagaya regained his strength. Even if our generation cannot defeat Kibutsuji Muzan, the next generation, will definitely be able to solve Kibutsuji Muzan and the shame of our maternity family. This time, you did a good job. The information mentioned by Miu is very beneficial to us, and let us know something about Kibutsuji Muzan. Yubayashiki Kagaya once again affirmed the cooperation with Miu, and even believed that with such a cooperation, the 5th Kibutsuji Day situation can be improved. By the way, some team members have discovered traces of followers of the Bliss cultist. Suddenly, as if thinking of something, the delivery room opened its mouth. Eternal Bliss teaching? Kochu Kanae murmured slightly, and immediately, the girl's expression became serious. Eternal Bliss teaching. A sectarian organization. It would not have attracted people's attention originally, but it has drawn a message about December. News about the Winding Doma, in 12 Kazuki. Because, the leader of the Bliss sect is 12 Kazuki, the second of the Winding. The appearance of Monshi Bliss cultists is very likely to indicate that Doma, the second Winding in 12 Kazuki, should be active nearby. This time, your task is very simple. Go there to investigate the news about the Bliss cultist, but, because it involves 12 Kazuki Doma, don't act rashly. Yubayashiki Kagaya said solemnly. He originally planned to give this task to Rock Pillars, Hamejima Kiyome. After all, this matter involves 12 Kazuki, the second Doma of the upper string, that is an extremely powerful ghost, except for the ghost of the sword in 12 Kazuki. The one of the upper string is black and dead, and he is the most powerful. You know, the pillar of the demon killing team may be able to deal with 12 Kazuki's lower string, but it is far from the opponent of the upper string. Especially Winding number 2. This is simply not what Kochu Kanae, who has just become a pillar, can deal with. However, Yenju Hamejima Kiyome is now entangled in missions and cannot pass, so he can only hand it over to Kochu Cigarette Way. I see. Kochu Kanae also understood the danger of this task, but still nodded seriously. After Hamejima Kiyome finishes his mission, I will let him pass as soon as possible. Yubayashiki Kagaya said earnestly, and at the same time did not forget to remind. Once you find out about Doma, don't act rashly. No. Kochu Kanae nodded earnestly. When Kochu Kanae set off to investigate the information about the Bliss cultists in the dark, 2 ghosts were fleeing crazily in a town.
Master Tamayo, I will definitely protect you. A firm man's voice sounded. It was one of the 2. Don't worry, you can definitely leave this time. Tamayo opened his mouth gently, but his brows were unconsciously frowned. During this period of time, he didn't know what happened, and Kibutsuji Muzan's search for her trace became more serious. Did something happen? Tamayo murmured that many years ago, when she was still a human being, she suffered from a terminal illness that could not be cured by medicine. In order to see her child grow up, she tried her best to find a cure. However, he was deceived by Muzan, the ghost dancer, and after becoming a ghost, he killed his husband and children with his hands in a state of being unable to control himself. Because of his proficient medical skills, Kibutsuji Muzan took her with him as a valet in order to increase the possibility of overcoming the sun. Tamayo knows that it is impossible to resist Muzan with his own strength, so he can only try his best to suppress his emotions and go undercover to find Muzan's weakness.
I thought it would be difficult to find opportunities for life, until Ji Guoyuanyi appeared. Almost, Kibutsuji Muzan died under Ji Guoyuan's sword. But Kibutsuji Muzan escaped anyway. Although Kibutsuji Muzan did not die, she was severely injured in the battle with Ji Guoyuanyi, and was even on the verge of death. At this time, she also took the opportunity to get rid of Kibutsuji Muzan's control. For so many years, she has continuously used drugs to transform her body. Not only can she completely get rid of Kibutsuji Muzan's control over her, but also greatly reduces her need for human flesh and blood, and can maintain her rationality and physical fitness. At the same time, he met Yushiru, who was terminally ill, and with the consent of the other party, he turned the other party into a ghost who did not need to eat people like himself. I can definitely go away. Even if I can't go away, I will definitely be able to protect Master Tamayo. Even 12 Kazuki. I won't let the other party hurt Tamayo grown-ups. Yushiru spoke very seriously. The two of them turned into invisible phantoms and ran in the forest. Similarly, there is a powerful ghostly aura exploring nearby, looking for something. Keep running, feeling the breath of chasing ghosts from behind. Tamayo and Yushiru's faces became more and more ugly. It seems. Can't escape the pursuit. The ghosts behind them seem to be able to clearly find the information they passed by. It may be a ghost who is very good at finding and tracking. Master Tamayo. Yushiru stopped abruptly, raised his head, looked at Tamayo with serious eyes. It won't work like this. The ghost behind them can easily track them, and if they don't get rid of the other party's tracking breath, it is impossible to escape. Tamayo's gentle face is also full of contemplation, but at this moment, it is impossible to hide his aura in a short time. Give it your all. Tamayo, balance. Yushiru's face was serious. He could feel that the ghosts chasing after him were not any of 12 Kazuki, and they still had a chance to defeat them. The man with short black hair and monk attire squatted slightly on the ground, with his palms protruding to the ground, and the eyeballs on the palms blinked slightly. It is the ghost of the arrow pattern, Kibutsuji Muzan's direct subordinate Yahaba. See it? A female ghost next to her kept clapping the handball in her hand, looking a little impatient. It is the ghost of handball, Kibutsuji Muzan's direct subordinate Susumaru. I see footprints. Look at this. Yahaba raised his head, with faint excitement in his eyes. If he really caught Tamayo who betrayed his master, they would be able to get more blood from him, and they would become even stronger. Feel the blood is excited. Don't mind playing around until you catch it. Susumaru kept clapping the ball. The strength came up, thanks to the blood that the adults gave us. Have you decided on a way to catch them? The corner of Yahaba's mouth next to him was also cruel, and he sneered sinisterly. Break their limbs so they don't run away. Susumaru laughed like a child. Yes, that's it, breaking their limbs with a handball. Sounds like it would be nice. Yahaba is also smiling. Master Tamayo, they're catching up. Yushiru closed his eyes slightly, seemed to see something, and spoke suddenly. Come yet? There was a wry smile on Tamayo's beautiful face. Master Tamayo, I will definitely protect you. Yushiru looked at Tamayo with a determined face. Do not force. No, I can definitely do it. I won't let anyone hurt Master Tamayo. Yushiru opened his mouth firmly, and at the same time, took out two things from his pocket. Just lightly stick it on him and Tamayo. The figures of the two people seemed unreal, invisible to the naked eye, as if they disappeared from this world all of a sudden. At the same time, Yahaba and Susumaru also appeared. Yahaba stopped abruptly. Susumaru looked at Yahaba strangely. What stopped? Breath. It ends at this place. Yahaba looked ahead. Obviously there was no one in front of him, but Yahaba couldn't help lowering his head, looking at the palm. The message from the eyeball in the palm was here. Here. Is it terminated? Susumaru murmured slightly, slapping the ball with his palms constantly. It's fun. This game, I like it. While speaking, the handball in his hand slammed forward. The next one, the handball that was played like a child, raged in the forest like a cannonball. Big trees were broken by handballs. It seemed to hit something, and an arm fell to the ground. Seeing this, Zu laughed like a child. I found it. Keep playing. What a pleasure. As he said that, he had two more handballs in his hand. Boom. The handball was shot by Susumaru, who bombarded the position where the arm had just dropped. Accompanied by the bombardment of the handball, there seemed to be something beating in the deserted place. Sure enough, it's invisible. It seems that he used the vampire technique to hide himself cleverly. Yahaba looked ahead, and there seemed to be something beating faintly, avoiding the constant bombardment of the handball. Also, Susumaru, you are too naive, or in other words, too arbitrary. If you kill them with this kind of bombardment, it's not good. Also, my clothes are all stained by the dust here. Yahaba looked at Susumaru annoyed. Aren't you bothered? Thanks to my handball, I can force them to track down, find them, and play more happily. Susumaru giggled, and in the next second, several more handballs were in his hands, and they were thrown towards the shadowy, invisible figure. Boom. Like shells raging in the forest. The rising dust spread outward like a mist. Yahaba jumped back unconsciously, avoiding the dust. My clothes are dirty again. You are nervous. Where is it dirty? Susumaru didn't bother to pay attention to Yahaba's nervous cleanliness, and continued to wave the handball towards the forest. All of a sudden, it seemed that something had been hit, and a man's scream came out from the forest. The next moment, a phantom swayed in a place where there was no one. Tamayo hugged a lost Yushiru and leaned against a big tree, both panting slightly. It appeared. Susumaru let out a childlike laugh. Damn. Yushiru struggled to get up, but one leg was broken and he couldn't get up at all. Master Tamayo, go first, I will hold them back. Yushiru spoke to Tamayo with a firm face. It's not what you say. Susumaru giggled and threw the handball again, hitting Tamayo's leg like a cannonball. Break off the limbs first, so as not to run away. Seeing the handball hit, Yushiru jumped up and blocked the handball with his body, but Yushiru himself was also hit by the handball, and a big hole was opened in his chest by the handball. Heal Shiro. Tamayo couldn't help making a worried sound. It's okay, Master Tamayo, please go quickly. I will definitely be able to stop them, and I will definitely protect Master Tamayo well. Even if there was a big hole in his chest, even if a leg and an arm were broken, Yushiru stood up with difficulty, staring at Susumaru and Yahaba full of anger. Put it down, you won't be able to run away, I will keep your heads and play with them like handballs. Susumaru giggled. It seems that someone is coming? Just when Susumaru wanted to continue, Yahaba, who was hiding far behind, suddenly looked at his palm, and the eyeballs of his palm were rolling. Like a ghost and a person. Strange, why'd a ghost stay with people? There was a slight doubt in Yahaba's eyes, and suddenly, he seemed to think of something, and his eyes lit up. Could it be the ghost who cooperated with the ghost-killing team? It's really lucky. Yahaba couldn't help cheering up. Rustling. The leaves in the forest were shaking, and the boy in the bamboo hat and the girl in the fox mask kept jumping and running in the forest. There are a lot of ghosts coming from the front? Under the bamboo hat, the golden eyes stared at the front, faintly excited. It looks like we're going to fight again. Under the fox mask, the girl's eyes also shone slightly, fight side by side with Mew. Very nice. Rustling. A swaying figure came from the forest, and Susumaru couldn't help but stop the handball attack in his hand. Under the moonlit night, two figures moved lightly, and finally landed on the branches. A boy wearing a hat. A girl wearing a fox mask. Yahaba couldn't help but looked up, looking at the two people who suddenly appeared. One ghost, one person. Very strange combination. These two ghosts are a bit strong. Makomo stared at Susumaru and Yahaba. These two ghosts were stronger than the previous ghosts, but the other two ghosts felt weak. However, looking at the situation in front of them, it seems that these ghosts have internal strife. For what? The girl frowned beautifully, a little confused. Unlike Makomo, who focused more on the two ghosts, Yahaba and Susumaru, he focused more on the ghost who was leaning against a tree and wearing a dark purple kimono decorated with a woman with wavy lavender branches and red flowers and a wide beige belt around her waist. She has long black hair, parted in the middle, and combed into a large, low bun, which is held in place by a flower barrette. The eyes are gentle, like a light pink mist. The lips are rosy, in stark contrast to the pale complexion. Is a beautiful woman. Of course, the reason Sumiu notices the other party is also because the other party is Tamayo. If I remember correctly, this used to be a doctor who lived next to Kibutsuji Muzan, and his medical skills can be said to be very powerful. Yushiru, who lost a leg and a hand, walked up to Tamayo with difficulty, looking around vigilantly. As far as Yushiru is concerned, he does not allow anyone to hurt Master Tamayo. Although he didn't know who these two people who appeared suddenly, no, one person and one ghost, were, but Yushiru was still vigilant instinctively. A ghost, with a human. Tamayo's eyes are also on Sumiu at the moment. As we all know, almost all the ghosts in this world are under the control of Kibutsuji Muzan, even she was like this back then. Back then, in order to get rid of Kibutsuji Muzan's control, she did not know how many experiments she had done on herself, and finally got rid of Kibutsuji Muzan's control through drug transformation. So, how did this ghost escape Kibutsuji Muzan's control? All of a sudden, a strong curiosity arose. Although, hundreds of years ago, relying on the power of Ji Guoyuan, a talented swordsman, he could not completely defeat Muzan, but Tamayo always believed that as long as the strength of people with the same ambition was gathered together, Muzan would be able to be completely killed. For this, she can bet everything. But all these years, the only ones she has seen that are not controlled by Kibutsuji Muzan are herself and Yushiru, who was transformed into a ghost by herself. She once felt very hopeless, but now. See this ghost, she seemed to see hope. Why is this ghost able to get rid of Kibutsuji Muzan's control? If the reason can be found, then it is definitely very good news for dealing with Kibutsuji Muzan. Are you the ghost your lord is looking for? Yahaba raised his head and looked at Sumiu. As a ghost, it's really disgusting to cooperate with the ghost-killing team. Yahaba licked his palm, a look of greed appeared in his eyes. Sumiu did not answer the other party's words, but said to Zhenzang beside him, "Look out for the other two ghosts." Makomo had already held down the hilt of Nichiren blades with his little hand, and was ready to fight side by side with Sumiu, but Sumiu asked him to watch over the other two ghosts, and he was somewhat reluctant in his heart. But, although reluctantly, Makomo still listens to Suemiu's words. Then, in a flash, the figure landed next to Yushiru and Tamayo, looking at the two ghosts vigilantly. Makomo glanced directly at Yushiru and began to size up Tamayo. This female ghost has just been stared at by Miu for a long time. I have to say that this female ghost is really beautiful, very charming, and her appearance is also very beautiful. No wonder he was watched by Miu. She looks very beautiful. You must know that after most people are turned into ghosts by Muzan, their bodies will inevitably undergo changes. Only a very small number of people will remain the same, and most of them will become particularly ugly. For example, a bigger nose, or ugly fangs, or Master Tamayo, take this opportunity, we will. Yushiru whispered. In front of Susumaru and Yaba Yu Mingxian were attracted by the ghost wearing a bamboo hat, and now, it is indeed a chance to escape. Although, they were caught by the human girl in front of them. But compared to Susumaru and Yahaba, this human girl is obviously not too much of a threat. Want to go? Under the fox mask, a smile appeared on the corner of the girl's mouth. Miu told me to watch you carefully, and you two ghosts should stay here until Miu has not dealt with those two ghosts. Well, that's not what you say. Yushiru snorted coldly, his hand and leg, which were broken by the handball, had completely healed before he knew it. Although he felt a little weak all over his body, he had recovered his combat effectiveness. Holding the talisman in his hand, he gently pasted it on his head, and the next moment, his figure disappeared from his eyes. Stealth. Makomo murmured slightly, his figure trailing behind Kochu lightly, and as he just left, a dull voice came from the place where he was standing just now. It was obvious that a place was attacked by Qian Shuru just now. The body floated down on the branch, and Makomo tilted his head and looked at the ground. Although he didn't know where the other party was, he didn't care. She can see that although this ghost is invisible, it is not perfect. As long as it makes any movement, it will produce movement. For example, there will always be a little wind when it moves. Eyes narrowed slightly, bent into a beautiful crescent shape, she gently waved to Yushiru, who was invisible underground. You can't do it. Too weak. Damn fly. Yushiru was enraged immediately. She was so arrogant even though she was still a little girl, and immediately attacked Makomo. But it's a pity that Makomo's speed is really fast. Yushiru's attack often has not passed, and the girl's figure has already gone to another place. He couldn't hit at all, and the angry Yushiru was extremely irritable. Yushiru and Makomo were fighting fiercely on one side, and on the other side, Sumiu also fell from the tree branch and walked towards Susumaru and Yahaba. Handball. Let's play. Seeing Sumiu approaching, Susumaru showed a happy expression on his face, like a girl encountering a fun game. Unknowingly, there are two more handballs in the hand. Sumiu ignored Susumaru, and all the information of the two ghosts appeared clearly in his eyes. At this moment, the breath of the two ghosts in front of Suemiu's mind was clearly heard. Name. Susumaru Ghost Level. Evolution Ghost, Primary Ghost, Evolution Ghost, Lower String, Upper String, Ancestor of Ghost. Abilities. Immortality, bad, handball manipulation, super healing. Cons. Photophobia, wisteria, curse, from Kibutsuji Muzan, Nichiren blades. Name. Yahaba Ghost Level. Evolution Ghost, Primary Ghost, Evolution Ghost, Lower String, Upper String, Ancestor of Ghost. Abilities. Immortal Body, bad, red arrow, super healing. Cons. Photophobia, wisteria, curse, from Kibutsuji Muzan, Nichiren blades. The abilities of the two ghosts clearly appeared in his mind. In fact, even without these, he still knew the abilities of the two ghosts. To be honest, the abilities of these two ghosts are actually not unique, but they are indeed very powerful. It's not that ghosts are strong because of their abilities, but how ghosts can use their abilities well. Obviously, these two ghosts have mastered their abilities proficiently. Susumaru, the ghost of handball, can manipulate the handball and continue to attack. Its power is enough to destroy buildings, and its power is even comparable to the shells of later generations. Yahaba, the ghost of the arrow pattern, uses the invisible arrow pattern to move or attack the things it touches. Come on. Let's play handball together. Susumaru grinned, and threw the handball towards Su-Mu like a cannonball. Su-Mu turned sideways to dodge. The handball almost brushed his cheek and fell on the ground behind him, making a huge hole. But on the handball, an invisible arrow pattern dragged, unexpectedly turned back, and hit Su-Mu's back from behind. Break a big hole in me. Susumaru let out a child's laughter. Did this kid think that the handball that was thrown could not be returned? What a dream. Her handball combined with Yahaba's arrow pattern can change the attack trajectory of the handball. Choke. As if there were eyes growing on the back, a sword slashed out, and the handball supported by the arrow pattern on the back was cut in half by Su-Mu's sword. If it's just these things, it's not my opponent. Su-Mu, who was walking, raised her brows, bent her body slightly, and then stepped on the ground suddenly. Boom, like a cannonball, it shot toward Susumaru. Fun, fun. Susumaru was as good-looking as a child seeing a fun toy, and he laughed happily. The next moment, his body swelled suddenly, and suddenly became 8 arms, each with a handball. Come on, keep playing. Susumaru grinned, and continued to throw the handballs in his hand, and he could cut one. Could it be possible to cut 8 handballs in a row? Be obedient and be smashed into pieces by my handball. Bang 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 bang. One after another sword shadows appeared in the air, 8 consecutive swords in an instant, and 8 handballs were chopped to pieces by him with Nichiren blades. Stop playing. This brat is a bit strong. Next to him, Yahaba's face also became serious. It's just that it just sounded a reminder swish. A flash of sword light flashed, and the palm with eyes flew into the sky. At the same time, another fiery red horse cut towards Yahaba's neck. As soon as his arm hurt, and he saw a knife slashing his head, Yahaba's already frightened face changed. Almost without hesitation, the 10 donkeys in a panic rolled to escape the blow. Hateful. Seeing the mud all over his body, Yahaba's eyes were full of anger. For him, who has always been obsessed with cleanliness, getting mud on his body was very annoying. All of this is thanks to the little ghost in front of me. As soon as the arm stretched out, the palm with eyes and 5 fingers that had been cut off got up on the ground, and after a while, it crawled in front of Yahaba, grabbed the sleeve of the upper body, and finally returned to the body of the lost feather. Su-Mu dodged a shooting handball while watching the scene calmly. For ghosts, as long as their heads are not beheaded by Nichiren blades, they are almost immortal, even if their palms are directly cut off like this, can also heal in a short time. Depending on the strength of the ghost, the healing speed is also different. The strength of the arrow pattern ghost in front of him is obviously at the top of the evolution ghost, and it only took a few seconds to heal. Sometimes, Su-Mu couldn't help feeling that Kibutsuji Muzan was too cautious, possessing the ability to turn people into ghosts. He could almost form an army of ghosts in a short time. But Kibutsuji Muzan is afraid to do so. One must know that an ordinary miscellaneous ghost can easily eliminate dozens of elite soldiers. If it is really necessary to overthrow the world power, it is not impossible. Once in power, it may be very difficult for a team like the Ghost Killing Squad to survive in this world. Suffice it to say, Kibutsuji Muzan has gone too far with caution. Go to hell with me. Yahaba stretched out his palm. The eyeball in the center of the palm blinked slightly, and the red arrow shot towards him at a speed that was hard to see with the naked eye. At the same time, 8 handballs also came from 8 directions. Looks like can no longer hide. Su-Mu watched this scene quietly, the corners of his mouth curled up slightly, and he put his hand on the hilt of his sword, watching quietly. When the attack was about to arrive, a slight voice came out. Escape. The next moment, Su-Mu's figure disappeared from the spot, and the handball and Hongji's arrow had already landed on the place where he had just stood in a daze. Fog is generated. Do you died? Yahaba murmured slightly. It's really not fun, I haven't had enough fun yet. Susumaru looked at the huge pothole, and already concluded that the ghost was smashed into meat paste. After all, the situation just now was obviously unavoidable. And with such a powerful attack, I'm afraid that I will be smashed into meat paste, and my body will be smashed into meat paste. Even with the body of a ghost, I'm afraid it will take a long time to recover. It's just. The huge pothole doesn't seem to feel the slightest smell of blood. Not good, this thought came to mind almost instantly. At this moment, A black shadow appeared on the ground behind Yahaba and Susumaru, and then Su-Mu appeared with a sword drawn and ready to cut. Yahaba and Susumaru also seemed to feel something, and turned their heads suddenly, just in time to see Su-Mu who was holding his sword drawn. When did you run behind them? This idea just surfaced, a sharp sword light has already flashed. Draw sword cut accompanied by a slight murmur, the sharp edge of the sword has passed through their necks one after another. Ma. The blood fell down the blade and dripped on the ground, making a slight sound. When the sound sounded, the heads of the two ghosts were instantly separated. Yahaba and Susumaru showed disbelief, opening and closing their mouths, wanting to say something, but the power of the sun contained in the Nichiren blades has already invaded, and both the ghost body and the head are slowly turning into black smoke at this moment. Handball, come in play. When the body was destroyed, Susumaru made a childlike voice with natural innocence. In the end, everything dissipated completely, and the two ghosts disappeared completely. At the same moment, a familiar voice also appeared in Su-Mu's mind. Ding. Congratulations to the host for slaying a ghost and manipulating the handball. Manipulate the handball. Can manipulate the handball and continue to attack, which is powerful enough to destroy buildings. Ding. Congratulations to the host for slaying a ghost and the red arrow. Arrow of red cleansing. Arrow patterns that are invisible to ordinary people, can move or attack things that touch. Two emotionless mechanical voices sounded in his ears, and with the sound of the voices, he himself seemed to have a clear understanding at this moment. With a slight squeeze of the palm, a handball appeared out of thin air, and with a sudden wave of the hand, the ball shot away like a cannonball. A large crater was directly smashed into the ground, and its power was almost comparable to that of a cannonball. And watching the handball move in the air with your own ideas, up, down, left, right. With the control of Hongji Jujian, the handball will also move with his own thoughts. This is a handball that can be controlled and can continue to emit the power of cannonballs. The ability is not bad. Su-Mu whispered, this trip was not in vain. Putting the sword back into its sheath, his eyes fell on the delicate figure that was moving gracefully under the moonlit night. Makomo, stop. Okay. The girl stepped forward, her figure drifting behind. The clothes fluttered, and when I looked again, they had already obediently landed beside Su-Mu. After beheading Yahaba and Susumaru, his eyes also fell on the other two ghosts. Yushiru and Tamayo. Does Mu want to kill them? Makomo tilted his head, his beautiful eyes bent into a crescent shape. Although it was a slight whisper, an invisible threat seemed to be hidden under that smiling face. Squinting little monster. And as Makomo's words fell, the world is also tense. And Yushiru also appeared from the phantom, firmly protecting in front of Tamayo, looking at the two of them vigilantly. Need not. He patted Makomo on the small head. Makomo looked at him with doubts in his good-looking eyes. Before, Mu had never held back from almost all ghosts. Why? Let's keep our hands on these two ghosts now. Is it because? Involuntarily, it fell on Tamayo. This ghost is really beautiful, with soft facial features and gentle temperament. Very beautiful female ghost. Suddenly a soreness emerged in my heart. I almost forgot that Mu was still a male ghost, and this was a female ghost. Did Mu become interested in this female ghost? Seemingly sensing something in Makomo's little head, he couldn't help stretching out his hand and tapping on Makomo's little head. Don't think about it. Nu. Makomo muttered. However, this female ghost is quite beautiful. If Mu likes it, I will catch it for you. After the initial panic, Tamayo also calmed down slowly. Looking at the person and ghost in front of him, Tamayo had indescribable doubts in his eyes. The combination of ghosts and people is really strange. Why? That little human girl would listen to a ghost. Moreover, after watching the girl's battle with Yushiru just now, it can be seen that the girl should have also practiced the breathing method. And the breathing method is the standard equipment of the ghost killing team. In other words, it shows that this girl belongs to the ghost killing squad. Even if she is not a member of the ghost killing squad, she has a close connection with the ghost killing squad. People and ghosts in the ghost hunting organization are together. Such a combination, no matter how you look at it, how confusing it is. Master Tamayo, you go first, I will hold them back. Hearing Makomo's words, Yushiru's face was also extremely ugly. It seemed that the ghost seemed to have ideas for Master Tamayo. He must not let the other party succeed, even if it cost his own life. He must protect Master Tamayo. You can't hold back, kid. Makomo curled his lips. That female ghost is my Mu's fancy. When the words came out, there seemed to be an inexplicable sourness. Yushiru's complexion also became even uglier. Although he didn't want to admit it, he had to admit that his strength was indeed much worse, not to mention Sumyu, even Makomo, he might not be an opponent. Get out of the way, Yushiru, he has no ill intentions towards us. A gentle voice sounded. Yushiru couldn't help turning his head. If there was malicious intent, they would have done it long ago. Tamayo said softly. A pair of pupils also began to swell Sumyu. Completely different from the ghosts I have seen before, this ghost seems to be completely unaffected by Kibutsuji Muzan. Yushiru was still a little worried, but he always obeyed Tamayo's words and stepped aside unconsciously. Let's find a place, this doesn't seem to be a place to talk. He said softly, and faintly felt a strange aura approaching here. It is good. Tamayo nodded. At this moment, Sumyu also had a thought, and a body that was exactly the same as his was also in place. Splitting ability. Able to separate ghosts that are exactly the same as themselves. A clone of the ghost was left behind, waiting for the ghosts who might come, and he followed Tamayo to their hiding place. Not long after Sumyu and the others left, an extremely fast figure came. Soon, the figure landed on a tree branch, and his eyes fell on the mess all over the ground. It was certain that his two direct subordinates, Senior Yu and Zhu Wan, had died here. The man was wearing black Western clothes and a white hat. At this moment, under the white hat, a pair of scarlet eyes stared at the ghost staying in place. No, it shouldn't be a ghost, just a clone of a ghost. What is certain is that no breath is felt on this ghost. In other words, this ghost is not a ghost that sucked his blood. Is it the same ghost as him? Kibutsuji Muzan. Sumyu, who stayed in place, looked up and looked at Kibutsuji Muzan on the treetop. You came later than I thought. Damn. Kibutsuji Muzan looked annoyed at the ghost clone in front of him. He felt the provocation of this ghost. This is something he cannot tolerate. For thousands of years, those who dared to provoke him almost ceased to exist. Except for the man who made him fear in his bones until now, Jiguo Yuanyi. Does this ghost also want to be Jiguo Yuanyi? Anyway, kill him. The palm stretched out, turned into an extremely huge arm, and grabbed the clone that stayed in place. Yin Hong stared at the ghost's clone. Even if he was completely controlled at this moment, the other party didn't seem to be surprised, but opened his mouth. Kibutsuji Muzan, I found you. The very calm words made daughter-in-law Wu unintentionally raise her throat. Boom. Without hesitation, with a pinch of 5 fingers, the avatar immediately turned into a ball of meat sauce. Anyway, kill him, this newborn ghost, Kibutsuji Muzan roared inwardly. Anger, or is it little fear? A secluded estate. Arriving here, Tamayo stopped. Here, there should be no one to disturb. Tamayo turned his head and looked at Sumyu. Sumyu's eyes fell on the manor, a manor hidden in the illusion. If it didn't really appear at the door, I'm afraid you wouldn't be able to find it. Is it vampirism? He murmured softly, and had to say that this manor was really cleverly hidden, especially the surrounding area was covered by the enchantment of vampirism, making it impossible for people to find out. It is good. He nodded and followed Tamayo into the manor. In the manor room, Sumyu and Makomo sat on one side, and Tamayo and Yushiru on the other. From the beginning to the end, Yushiru's eyes were fixed on Sumyu, and the hostility in his eyes was barely concealed. He didn't forget what Makomo said just now, this ghost is interested in Master Tamayo. This is intolerable. Only he is well aware of Sumyu's strength and dare not provoke her. If you stare at Mu again, your eyeballs will be dug out. Makomo on the side also immediately narrowed his eyes. Yushiru opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but in the end he didn't say anything, he could only hum his nose to express his dissatisfaction. At this moment, Tamayo also brewed the tea and handed a cup to Sumyu. Sumyu took it and was about to drink it, but was held down by Makomo. Be careful, it's poisonous. No problem. Sumyu shook her head, not to mention, ordinary toxins are useless in a ghost's body. It is only possible unless the toxin of wisteria flower is researched like Kochu Shinobu in the future. After taking the hot tea, take a sip, the fragrance of the tea enters the lungs, and a mellow fragrance lingers in the spleen and lungs for a long time. The tea is good tea, and the craftsmanship of making tea is also superb. You flatter me. Tamayo responded. Sumyu was about to say something, but suddenly, she seemed to feel something, and her body couldn't help shaking. What's wrong? Makomo looked at Sumyu strangely. Nothing. Sumyu shook his head, the avatar he just stayed in place should have been killed. If not expected, it should be Kibutsuji Muzan. Strange, you don't seem to have any intention of killing us? Tamayo raised his head and looked at Sumiu with a pair of eyes. Is it weird? Yes, you know, when you killed the other two ghosts just now, your attitude was very firm. Tamayo said naturally. I am the same as Yushiru, also a ghost, I wonder why you. The latter words, of course, needless to say. It's almost easy to understand. Makomo next to him also turned his head around and looked at Sumiu curiously. This is also where Makomo's doubts arise. You know, Miu has never held back the ghosts she and Miu met before. Why? Met the two ghosts in front of me. Sumiu suddenly stopped killing them. I'm just somewhat hostile to those ghosts who have completely lost their nature and feed on human flesh. Sumiu spoke very flatly. You guys, shouldn't you be eating human flesh? He looked at Tamayo and Yushiru. Although both of them are ghosts, these two ghosts have already changed themselves through drugs, and they only need to drink a small amount of human blood to replace Nianren's flesh and blood. Tamayo looked up in surprise, although she didn't know why Sumiu knew this, but she was sensible and didn't ask further. I'm afraid that's not the only purpose of not killing me, sir? Tamayo raised his head and looked at Sumiu. It's natural. He looked at Tamayo. I hope I can get your help. Tamayo frowned slightly. The little girl's strength is limited. I'm afraid she won't be able to help Mr. too much. Tamayo shook her head. Her strength is not strong. If not, she would not be chased by Yahaba and Susumaru who can't even play the string. Sumiu shook her head. Compared with strength, Tamayo's medical skills are very powerful. Of course, for Sumiu, he is a ghost with a strong recovery ability, and his medical skills have little effect on him. Forget it. Don't know what Sir wants Tamayo to help. Tamayo frowned tightly. Destroy Kibutsuji Muzan. Sumiu spoke very plainly. With Kibutsuji Muzan's character, when he can bask in the sun, he and Kibutsuji Muzan are already enemies. Walking in the dark, for thousands of years, no one is more eager to bask in the sun than Kibutsuji Muzan. For this reason, he has been painstakingly looking for the whereabouts of the Bianwa over the years. Destroy Kibutsuji Muzan. Hearing Suemiu's words, Tamayo's body trembled slightly involuntarily. No one knows the power of Kibutsuji Muzan better than her. As the valet beside Kibutsuji, and also the physician beside Kibutsuji Muzan, she knows the power of Kibutsuji Muzan better than anyone else. That ghost is almost an invincible existence. Except for the swordsman who used the breath of the sun many years ago and could have defeated Kibutsuji Muzan, I am afraid there is no one anymore. And that person is dead. Tamayo shook his head. With your current strength, you are not an opponent of Kibutsuji Muzan at all, far from it. Although, before Sumiu beheaded Yahaba and Susumaru, it looked very powerful, but compared to Kibutsuji Muzan, it was far inferior, even, far worse. Even the strongest pillar of the demon killing team, Yenju Himejima Kiyome, cannot be Kibutsuji Muzan's opponent. Not only the rock pillar Himejima Kiyome, even if all the pillars of the ghost killing team are gathered to deal with Kibutsuji Muzan together, they are not Kibutsuji Muzan's opponent. The only way to eliminate Kibutsuji Muzan may be to desperately consume, regardless of death, and at the cost of the death of all the pillars, drag Kibutsuji Muzan into the daytime, use the sunlight, and kill Kibutsuji Muzan. However, this possibility is too low. Kibutsuji Muzan is not a fool, and, being cautious by nature, such a chance will not be given. You're right. I'm really not Kibutsuji Muzan's opponent right now. He spoke softly. Although I don't want to admit it, these are the facts before my eyes after all. Tamayo's eyes were full of doubts. Since he knew this, how could he talk about eliminating Kibutsuji Muzan? But is not Kibutsuji Muzan's opponent now, but it doesn't mean it won't be in the future. Tomorrow's me will definitely be stronger than today's me. He looked at Tamayo seriously, with a strong confidence in his eyes. Looking at Sumiu with a confident face, she seemed to vaguely see the figure of the man who could slash 1,500 effective slashes in a second hundreds of years ago from the other person's eyes. Is it an illusion? A slight murmur came from Tamayo's mouth, and he couldn't help but believe that the other party would be able to do it. Is it an illusion? Tamayo raised his head, and his eyes fell on the opposite side, the boy in the bamboo hat. Covered by the bamboo hat, she couldn't see clearly what this ghost looked like, but those golden eyes were so sharp, just like the original swordsman who used the breath of the sun hundreds of years ago. The eyes are so sharp that they seem to see through people's hearts. Can you tell me why you beheaded Kibutsuji Muzan? After a while, Tamayo spoke seriously. If Su Mu were human, she wouldn't ask such a question. After all, do people need a reason to kill ghosts? But, Su Mu is a ghost. Could it be that this ghost has the same experience as himself? The same experience of being persecuted by Kibutsuji Muzan. Once, hundreds of years ago, she was just a very ordinary person, living in a very warm family, with her own lovely child. At that time, what she hoped most was that she could live until her son grew up. But she was terminally ill. As a family of doctors, at that time, she had been trying her best to find a way to keep her alive. At that time, Kibutsuji Muzan appeared. Tell her that as long as she accepts his blood, she can live forever. So, she trusted Kibutsuji Muzan. Received the blood of Kibutsuji Muzan. Became a ghost. But Kibutsuji Muzan never told her that becoming a ghost is no longer the same as a human being. The bloodthirsty nature possessed by the ghost was something she couldn't suppress, and she no longer knew what kind of night it was. She ate her husband, she ate her son. When the ghost nature disappears and the human nature returns a little bit, looking at the bloody. That moment what's inside she doesn't remember much. All I know is that at that moment, she wanted to die very much, but she couldn't die. She pierced her throat with scissors countless times, but she found out very sadly that she couldn't die no matter what. This is her experience and the reason why she wants to kill Muzan, the ghost dancer. Because Kibutsuji Muzan tricked her into thinking that if she received Kibutsuji Muzan's blood, she would be able to see her son grow up. But the result was that he killed his son and his husband with his own hands. I will never forget that at that night, the young son looked at her with a childish and innocent face. "Mom, are you hungry? You bit me." Devouring her own flesh and blood little by little, no one can understand the kind of anger in her heart. The hands are clenched unconsciously, even if hundreds of years have passed, even if the years pass by, the memory of that night will never be forgotten. Therefore, she also wants to know the reason why Su Mu wants to kill Kibutsuji Muzan at this moment. Tamayo has always believed that only by uniting people with the same aspirations as her can kill Kibutsuji Muzan completely. For this reason, she is willing to block her all. Looking at the inquiry in Tamayo's eyes, and the sadness hidden in the depths, Su Mu couldn't help but stood up, went to the window, and looked at the full moon in the sky. "Why did you kill Kibutsuji Muzan?" He whispered softly, then clenched his fists naturally. "From the moment I became a ghost, I and Muzan have been enemies." "I don't know if you believe such an answer," he said softly. Kibutsuji Muzan, as the first generation of Oni who survived the millennium, calls himself a creature infinitely close to perfection, but cannot bask in the sun. How would Kibutsuji Muzan react if he knew that he, a ghost, could bask in the sun? Moreover, Kibutsuji Muzan has a very cruel and ruthless personality. He will destroy those who are looking for themselves, or those who violate their will. Cautiously, he dominates the ghosts with absolute terror, and he never wants any ghosts to escape his control. Tamayo looked up and looked at the boy's back seriously. Compared to Kibutsuji Muzan, this boy is still very weak, even weaker than many pillars of the Demon Slayer team that he has seen before. But from the boy's back, she vaguely saw a glimmer of hope to defeat Kibutsuji Muzan. Although it was just a tiny bit, it was enough for her to grasp it desperately. "Sir, I don't know what you want to do as a concubine." She also looked at the other party seriously. The other party asked her to talk about these things, not just these things. After all, the other party was a ghost, and her medical skills could not help the other party much. If she knew more information, she should understand that she has already cooperated with the ghost killing team, and if the ghost killing team is willing, she doesn't mind providing medical treatment for the ghost killing team. If this ghost knows the inside story, she also provided treatment for Yubayashiki Kagaya, the current head of the Ghost Slayer squad. However, only Yubayashiki Kagaya, the head of the Ghost Slayer team, knows all this, and no other members of the Ghost Slayer team know about it. Maybe the ghost in front of me doesn't know. Su Mu turned back, looked at Tamayo, and looked at him very seriously. "I want to know all the information about the swordsman who made Kibutsuji Muzan terrified to the bone hundreds of years ago." More precisely, he wanted to know about the practice method of that swordsman. As a ghost, it is impossible for him to learn too much from the ghost killing team. Not to mention that the ghost killing team doesn't fully trust him now. Even if they trust him completely in the future, it is impossible for him to unreservedly share all the information about the breathing method to him. And Tamayo, as a ghost who personally witnessed the battle between Kibutsuji Muzan and Ji Guoyuan hundreds of years ago, probably has a much better understanding of Ji Guoyuan than the people of the current ghost killing team. And there's no way Tamayo, who has spent hundreds of years trying to find a way to defeat Kibutsuji Muzan, would not have studied that swordsman. That swordsman. Tamayo murmured, even after many years, that battle, about the sword that the initial swordsman fought against Kibutsuji Muzan, is still imprinted in his mind like a hot sun. 1,500 effective slashes in 1 second. With just one sword strike, Giwu Jiwu was forced to flee for his life in embarrassment. If Kibutsuji Muzan's means of escape were not powerful enough to instantly split his body into more than 1,800 fragments and flee in all directions, I am afraid that Kibutsuji Muzan would have fallen under the sword of that swordsman. That person was someone Kibutsuji Muzan simply couldn't fight against. Even after so many years, Kibutsuji Muzan still lives under the sword that he feared back then. Tamayo raised his head, and his eyes fell on Sumyu. Obviously he didn't expect that Sumyu would want to know the information of that swordsman. But when you think about it carefully, it is not surprising. After all, for thousands of years, there is only one person who can really defeat the ghost dance plan Muzan. However, because we are human beings, our lifespan is limited after all, and we cannot escape the shackles of life, so we can only turn into a piece of Lois in the end. Okay, I will tell you all the information about that swordsman. But, probably disappointed you. I didn't really have much contact with that swordsman. Strictly speaking, there is only one side. Maybe you don't get as much information as you want. Tamayo said softly. After all, that human thing is comparable to a god and demon, and it is definitely not something that a ghost like her can spy on. It may disappoint you, I don't know much about that swordsman. Maybe you won't get as much information as you want from me. Tamayo looked at Sumyu and said seriously. Regarding the original swordsman who mastered the breath of the sun, maybe, there should be no second one in this world. Because, that is a person loved by God. Sumyu nodded. I know, just tell me what you know. In addition to learning about the swordsman from Tamayo, he can also find some information from 2 other places, and the information on Tamayo is only for reference. The first place to learn about it is from Nezuko's father, Kamado Tanjiro. After all, Kamado Tanjiro is the descendant of Kamado Tanjiro's close friend Kamado Tanjiro's family. As the inheritors of the will of the country, the Kamado family has always shouldered the task of inheriting the Nichiren flower paper earrings and the breath of the god of fire Kagura, left by him. Moreover, Kamado Tanjiro is the only ordinary person outside of the Demon Slayer squad who has mastered the transparent world, and has mastered the principle of the transparent world. In the anime, when Tanjiro played against Akaza in Infinity City, he recalled the principle of the transparent world that his father explained to him, which allowed Tanjiro to understand the transparent world. Another place to learn about is from Rengoku Mojiro, the father of Rengoku Kyojuro, the former Yenju Rengoku Kyojuro of the Demon Slayer squad, following Guo Yuani's message. Hearing what Sumyu said, Tamayo didn't say anything. In the past, in order to find out how to defeat Kibutsuji Muzan, she had done research on Ji Guo Yuan Yi. But it is a pity that such as Ji Guo Yuan, who was born with the ability to use breathing and penetrate the world, has extremely high talent and attainments in swordsmanship. The first swordsman who awakened the stripes was born with stripes, and was recognized by the gods. Beloved, it is impossible for her to research anything. I got up and found a yellow notebook from the cabinet in the room. These are what I once knew about Ji Guo Yuan Yi, and everything I know is here. Sumyu took the notes and read them carefully. Unfortunately, as Tamayo said, she really doesn't know much about Ji Guo Yuan, and the things recorded are of little value. However, there is one point that has certain introductions and guesses. That's some speculation about zebra. You must know that once a person activates the stripes, his strength will be greatly improved. Regarding how to open the stripes, Tamayo made his own guess in recalling the battle between Ji Guo Yuan and Kibutsuji Muzan. That is, the body temperature needs to reach 39 degrees, and the heart rate is more than 200 times. It's just that if you want to do all of this, it's absolutely impossible for a human body to bear it. So, once you start the markings, you can't live past the age of 25. Based on Suemu's understanding of the anime Demon Slayer, there are very few people in this world who can open stripes. Except for the Jigwa brothers in the Warring States period, humans who understand this technique include Kamado Tanjiro, Hamejima Kiyome, Tokito Muichiru, Iguro Obanai. Following Kunazuki's death, Sugikuni Michikatsu is now one of the top players in 12 Kazuki Black is dead. Kamado Tanjiro is still a child now. Tokito Muichiru and Iguro Obanai should not be mastered yet. Now, the entire Demon Slayer masters the pattern as Yenju Hamejima Kiyome and Tanjiro's father, Kamado Tanjiro. Thank you. Seeing Tamayo's introduction about zebra, Su-Mu knew that this trip was not in vain, and this little thing alone was enough to help him. No. It should be me who wants to thank you. Tamayo shook his head. It is Tamayo's honor to meet a like-minded person like Mr. Su-Mu was slightly silent. Indeed, for Tamayo, she was already dead after devouring her own bones that night. The motivation behind Tamayo's survival is to atone for her sins as much as possible and kill Kibutsuji Muzan, who destroyed her everything. Over the years, I have also found some ways to deal with Kibutsuji Muzan. As a doctor, I think there are corresponding medicines and treatments for any injury, so she believes that ghosting is actually a physical change. As long as you can turn ghosts back into humans after research, you can defeat Muzan. Tamayo looked at Su-Mu and expressed her guess. She would not hide the information she knew from those who shared her goals. A good guess. Su-Mu nodded and agreed with Tamayo's conjecture. Tamayo's eyes lit up when he heard Su-Mu's approval. After all, what an incredible idea it is to turn a ghost into a human being. Unexpectedly, the other party agreed with it. I think, if Ms. Tamayo can develop a drug that turns ghosts into humans, then many ghosts will be saved. He said softly that not all ghosts are willing to become ghosts. These days, among the ghosts he and Makomo killed together, many of them were killed by his own Nichiren blades, showing pain and unwillingness not about death. More of a relief. For example, Susumaru, the handball ghost who was just beheaded by himself. Its final expression is about the innocence of children. Handball. Come and play. A childlike character, but was tricked by Kibutsuji Muzan, went to fight, and killed many people. Save the ghost. Tamayo murmured slightly, and couldn't help thinking of everything about himself in his mind, thinking of the night that he would never forget. If she could really save other ghosts, it would be a redemption for her. If it's possible in the future, I'd like to ask Sir to do me a favor. Tamayo bowed, making a request. Please say. Help Tamayo collect 12 Kazuki's blood. Tamayo said softly, only by completely analyzing the blood of 12 Kazuki, can we truly understand Kibutsuji Muzan, and can we research the corresponding medicine. I see. If I meet 12 Kazuki next time, I will help collect them if possible. Su-Mu nodded, and agreed without hesitation. If he killed 12 Kazuki in the future, these things would be just a matter of convenience. Thanks. Tamayo bent over and said thanks. Su-Mu shook her head. Actually, I also have something to say to you. Tamayo raised his head and his eyes fell on Su-Mu, wondering what the other party wanted to say to her. Although you are ghosts, in fact, you are more like humans than humans. You and I are like ghosts walking in the dark, but our hearts yearn for the light. In my eyes, there is actually no difference between you when you write about human beings. Tamayo was slightly taken aback, and was told by a ghost that they were more like human beings. Tamayo's heart was complicated, and at the same time, he was also moved. Because of the evil deeds of killing to vent anger in the past, Tamayo once thought that he was an unforgivable evil spirit, but today, from Su-Mu's mouth, he regards himself as a human being. Actually, I agree with Mu. I also think that you are more like humans than ghosts. Makomo on the side also spoke his own words. Thanks. Tamayo bent down, his head almost to the ground, to express his sincere thanks. She was very moved. Whether it is Su-Mu, a ghost, or Makomo, a human being, they are willing to treat themselves as human beings, which really touched her. After all, the crimes committed by a ghost like her, in her opinion, can never be forgiven. Now, he has been forgiven by others. It's like being in the dark all the time, and suddenly one day, the first light of life is ushered in. It is a kind of warmth that illuminates people's hearts. After saying goodbye to Tamayo and Yushiru, Su-Mu took Makomo on the journey again. But, this time, Su-Mu's main goal is no longer to kill evil spirits, but find Kamado Tanjiro, the protagonist of the Demon Slayer world. Of course, it is definitely not greedy for the beauty of Tanjiro's sister Nezuko, or wanting to play a game of Nezuko's development. Of course, there is also such a trace of thought in the heart. After all, although he has become a ghost, he has not disappeared at all in terms of human nature. I believe that anyone who has watched the anime Demon Slayer will never forget a girl like Nezuko. It's normal to have thoughts about Nezuko being such a cute, a female ghost who can grow into a big Lolita, and down, into a little Lolita. Of course, the current Nezuko is not a female ghost. The current Nezuko should still be a little lowly, right? Mu, as Kamado Tanjiro really an expert hidden in the world as Mu said? Makomo looked at Su-Mu curiously. Sumiyu did not hide from Makomo the information about finding Kamado Tanjiro, so Makomo was very curious about Kamado Tanjiro. Yes. Sumiyu nodded. Demon Slayer didn't describe much about FAG's father, Kamado member Wang Lang. But one thing is very clear. That is, Zhao Men Tanjiro is the only ordinary person who has mastered the penetrating world other than the Demon Slayer squad. If the guess is correct, Kamado Tanjiro should also be one of the few people who opened the stripes. After all, in the anime, Kamado Tanjiro has a stripe on his forehead. Then Makomo should pay a good visit then. Makomo is also interested. At the same time, I also have some doubts. Having mastered such a powerful force, but willing to make a living by selling charcoal for generations, such a family is really a family worthy of admiration. The sky did not know when it started to snow. Another year of winter is coming. For the young Kamado Tanjiro, he likes this kind of weather very much, which means that this year's charcoal can sell better again. Since my father's health became worse and worse, the burden of the family suddenly became heavier. As the eldest son of the family, it is natural to shoulder the responsibility of bearing the burden of the family. I hope my father's health will get better soon. Tanjiro prayed in his heart. Walking along the rugged mountain road is really difficult for him who is still very young. After a while, I became a little out of breath. Looking at the dim sky. I need to go home as soon as possible. It's dark, so it's hard to go. Tanjiro, who was carrying an empty basket, murmured slightly that the trip to the town went smoothly, and all the charcoal baskets he carried were sold out. However, simply, home is almost here. Night shrouded. In a small house, the fire was burning. The somewhat tired Kamado Aoi was hugging the young child, looking at the children playing happily in the room, and his tired face was unconsciously filled with joy. Mom, when will Big Brother come back? The young Mao asked while hugging his mother's thigh. Should be back soon? Kamado Aoi responded gently. Just looking at the heavy snow falling outside, there is a hint of worry in her eyes. This is Tanjiro's first time going out to sell charcoal independently. She is actually very worried in her heart, but she will not show her worry in front of other children. Mao, when the Big Brother comes back, he will definitely bring delicious food to Mao. The sensible Nezuko also took his younger brother's hand, not to let Mao keep pestering his mother. The Big Brother has to go out to do errands, and many things at home have to be done by the mother. The younger brother is by the side, which will greatly affect the mother. Mao has to eat a lot of delicious food. Mao let out a cheerful laugh, looking forward to the Big Brother's arrival even more. Nezuko stroked his younger brother's little head. Unlike her younger sister, she is the same as the Big Brother. As the eldest daughter of the family, she is also sensible from a very early age. At the same time, I can take good care of my younger siblings. Although the days were a bit tough, the whole family was working hard, and it wasn't too hard. Nezuko's eyes could not help falling on his father who was still drowsy on the bed, and there was a hint of worry unconsciously in his eyes. My father's condition has gotten worse. I hope my father's condition will recover soon. Nezuko prayed silently in his heart. Bang bang bang. There was a knock on the door. The moment he heard the knock on the door, Kamado Aoi, who had been worried about his son Tanjiro, hurriedly opened the door. See the man standing at the door. It was not his own son Kamado Tanjiro, but a well-mannered man in black western clothes and a white hat. In the middle of the night in the forest, Kamado Kuiji was a little surprised when such a wealthy man knocked on the door. I passed by here by chance. Because of the heavy snow, the road was blocked. I hope I can borrow some hot water to warm my body. I am really grateful. A gentle smile appeared on Kibutsuji Muzan's pale face. Apparently, not a bad guy. Okay, I'll get you some hot water right now. You don't have to be so polite. People will inevitably encounter some difficulties when they are outside. Kamado Aoi smiled. She hopes that in the future, if her son Tanjiro cannot go home, he can also get some small help from others. Come in, it's cold outside, but it's warmer inside. Kamado Eg warmly extended the invitation. Thanks. You really are a nice guy. Kibutsuji Muzan walked in politely. The moment he entered the door, there was a tinge of scarlet in his gentle eyes. He licked his lips unconsciously, and his eyes fell on Kamado Nezuko, Kamado Takeo, Kamado Shigeru, and Kamado Rokuta one after another, and then stopped for a while at Kamado Eg who was about to fetch water. In the end, it stopped at the man lying on the bed, Kamado Tanjiro. It can be clearly felt that this person has a very serious illness. However, one can still feel that the other party's frail body contains very powerful energy. Especially the streak on his forehead made his pupils shrink slightly. It looks like Mr. S' condition is not good. Kibutsuji Muzan seemed to speak inadvertently. Well, Tan Lang's body has always been weak, and he has recently been infected with chronic illnesses, and his health is deteriorating. Kamado Eg handed warm water to Kibutsuji Muzan, a little sad. Really, it sounds really bad. I happen to have some nutritional supplements here, which may be of some use to Mr. S' body. Kibutsuji Muzan pulled the tonic out of his pocket. Is this possible? Kamado Aoi shook her head. It's okay, it just so happens that you helped me today, so let me thank you. If you don't accept it, I won't feel at ease. Then. That's fine. Kamado Eg was a little hesitant, but seeing her husband's weak body, she finally nodded. I am also very grateful to the people in front of me. Thank you very much. You're welcome. Kibutsuji Muzan said softly, deep in his eyes. The eyes were scarlet and flickering. Kibutsuji Muzan took a deep look at Kamado Tanjiro, who was still lying on the bed. At the same time, I took a look at all the members in the room. Kamado Aoi, Kamado Nezuko, Kamado Takeo, Kamado Rokuta, Kamado Shigeru, Kamado Hanako, and got a detailed number in my heart. When the time comes, none of them will be missing. It's really a big family with a lot of people. It's not easy to feed so many children. Gui Wu murmured in a low voice, and said in her own words, after a while, you won't have to work so hard. After waving his hands and saying goodbye to the gentle Kamado Eg who was delivered to the door, Kibutsuji Muzan lowered the brim of his white hat and walked slowly into the snowy night. Bon voyage. Kamado Eg blessed. Kibutsuji Muzan's footsteps paused slightly, his eyes sparkled with scarlet. She was really a simple woman, she had no defense at all, and a ferocious face appeared on her face. After closing the door, Kamado Aoi put his palms together, hoping that his son Tanjiro would come back healthy. It seems that God has answered Zhao Men Kuiji's prayer somewhere. There was a knock on the door. Bang bang bang. There was a familiar knock on the door. Master, I'm back. Kamado Tanjiro's familiar voice sounded, which made Kamado Eg suddenly excited. The big brother is back. The children in the room immediately began to cheer up. Accompanied by the sound of excited footsteps, the children in the room ran out quickly. Kamado Kuiji also opened the door swiftly. The moment the door opened, the cold wind blew, causing the bodies of everyone in the room to tremble slightly. However, everyone is very happy. The big brother is back. Well, Rokuta, Hanako, Takeo, Shigeru, and Nezuko, I'm back. As the door opened, the figure of a young man also emerged. The young man with dark red hair and red eyes, son of Hujo, has a scar on his left forehead and wears Nichiren earrings that have been passed down from generation to generation. It was Kamado Tanjiro. Nezuko thoughtfully removed the pannier from Big Brother's back. Hurry up and get inside, the room is warm. It is good. Tanjiro nodded. Mother Kamado Kuiji quickly brought over a bowl of ginger soup. Holding ginger soup in his hand, feeling the warmth on his back, looking at his brother and sister who are entwined around him begging him to tell a story, and not far away, Nezuko who is helping his mother in a sensible way. Kamado Tanjiro's eyes there was a touch of warmth. Tanjiro big brother, younger siblings are very attached to you. When you didn't come back, everyone chased Nezuko and asked, where did big brother go? Why didn't he come back? Everyone was very worried about big brother. Nezuko put down his work, came to Tanjiro's side, and hugged the youngest Liuta who was playing around. It took a little time to sell charcoal in the town, but the charcoal is all sold out. Tanjiro explained, and at the same time took out a small cloth bag from his pocket, shook it gently, and there was a crisp sound of coins colliding, which was very pleasant to hear. I sold it for a lot of money, enough to buy some good medicine for my father, and I also bought some favorite food for my younger siblings, of course, Nezuko's favorite kope candy. Wrapped in a small oiled paper, when the oiled paper was opened, a few small candies shaped like stars emerged. Jimpingtang is made from luo powder and sugar water or sugar wine water, and there are various tastes and colors according to different raw materials. Unfortunately, Big Brother only buys these few. There was a little disappointment in Tanjiro's eyes. There was not much money for selling charcoal. In addition to buying medicine for his father, he had to bring some back. After all, the family still had money. It's been a lot. Nezuko happily took kopita, which is her favorite food. For poor families, sugar is already a luxury, not to mention the candies made from it. Although he took the candy, Nezuko didn't eat it, but twisted a piece with his little hand, first gave one to Lutai who was holding him, then gave it to Hanako, Shigeru, and Takeo, and after giving it to his younger siblings, only one was left. 1. Nezuko hesitated slightly, and handed the last one to big brother Tanjiro. You eat, big brother. No, Nezuko eat. What Nezuko wanted to say, Tanjiro directly twisted the Jinpei sugar and sent it to Nezuko's mouth. Feeling the sweetness of Kopita on his lips, Nezuko's beautiful eyes narrowed happily. It's really delicious. Looking at the smiles of the whole family at this moment, Tanjiro couldn't help scratching his head, feeling warm in his heart. Although this kind of life is not easy, it is also very happy. However, life is like the sky, with seasons changing and changing all the time. It won't always be a clear sky, and it won't always be snowing. But as long as the family is together, all are happy. By the way, Tanjiro, did you meet a traveler on the road just now? The busy Kamado-iji seemed to have thought of something and couldn't help asking Tanjiro. Traveler? Tanjiro frowned slightly, he didn't see it. Just now, a passing traveler borrowed some hot water from home to drink. He should go on the way back to Tanjiro. I thought Tanjiro would meet him. Kamado-kuiji explained with a smile. Forehead. Maybe it was too dark, so I didn't see it. Tanjiro shook his head. Kamado-iji nodded, looked at the dark night outside. That's right, today's night is really dark, there is not even a moon. On the other hand, after continuous searching, Sumiu and Makomo also roughly locked the approximate location of the Kamado family. After all, the family who sold charcoal for generations, and the nearby towns, should have some clues as long as they ask. In the inn, Makomo was lying on the bed with his clothes closed, his little head raised unconsciously, looking at Miu, who was holding a sword on the beam of the bed. Are you going to visit the Hermit Lord tomorrow? Miu nodded, with a look of anticipation in his eyes, because the other party is probably the only ordinary person who has mastered the breathing method. Besides the ghost killing team, and is the only one who has arrived, ordinary people who see through the world. Probably, only from him can I get the breathing method. And it is the breath of the sun, the ancestor of all breathing methods. I'm really looking forward to it. Makomo also had yearning in his eyes, but looking at Miu, who was still lying crookedly on the beam. Miu, why do you always like to stay on the beam like a bat? Really, a very strange character. Miu lowered his head and looked at Makomo carefully. Because, in this way, I can observe Makomo's appearance very well. Makomo's delicate and immature face blushes unconsciously. Miu, it's always like this, always saying something that makes Makomo blush. It's really, really bad. The next day, early in the morning, Miu woke up early, of course, not on the beam, but on the bed. What she said to Makomo last night was just some teasing words. He didn't mean it. As for whether Makomo took it seriously, only Makomo himself knows. In fact, last night he had 2 guest rooms, and after Makomo fell asleep, he went back to his room. Open the window, and the warm sunlight falls on the person's body along the window. It is warm, but Miu does not feel warm, but feels that with the sunshine, the whole person has a feeling of being muddled. Sure enough, Y's character still doesn't like daytime. Although he can bask in the sun, the characteristics of ghosts make him not like the daytime. During the daytime, his strength can only be half exerted, and the abilities belonging to ghosts will also be suppressed.
And at night, the whole person will become extremely excited again.
The reason why I stayed in Makomo's room last night was also because the ghost who was excited at night couldn't sleep. Boom boom boom. There was a crisp knock on the door, and you could tell it was a real possession without even thinking about it. When I opened the door, I saw Makomo's delicate face. What a face you never get tired of. Is it tightly packed? Makomo looked at Miu, who was wearing a bamboo hat and his whole body was almost covered by black clothes, and couldn't help laughing. You know, I'm a ghost. He reached out and tapped Makomo's head lightly. It hurts. Makomo covered his head, and looked at Miu with some resentment. How did I find out that you like to bully me a lot recently? Always make jokes about Makomo. Miu tilted her head, and the golden eyes under the bamboo hat flickered. That's because I like Makomo, you think. If someone who is not related, will definitely not bully her for no reason. And I won't just make fun of others. You. Don't talk nonsense. Be careful, I'll go back and tell your fiancé, Tsuyuri Kanao. Makomo turned his back, muttered with his mouth open, and made a low-pitched threat. He was used to Miu running the train with his mouth full. The longer I stayed with Miu, I gradually realized that Miu is really bad, always saying some very simple, but very touching love words, always touching Makomo's heart a burst of waves. Every time, when I thought the other party was confessing to me, I found that the other party seemed to be joking with Mikomo. And when you think the other party is joking, it seems that the other party is telling you the truth. Sometimes, it is impossible to tell whether the words of Mew are true or not. But one thing is clear, that is, the words of Mew are very pleasant to hear. Although she feels ashamed when she speaks, she likes to listen to it surprisingly. Ha ha. Seeing Mikomo like this, Mew couldn't help laughing, and looked at the sky. Let's set off quickly. If the sun arrives at noon, it will be too bad. It would be too uncomfortable for a ghost like him if he was still on his way during the scorching sun. This is also the reason why he got up early. After all, the morning sun is not too intense. I really don't understand you. Since the day is still so uncomfortable, it will be fine when the night passes. Mikomo muttered. He could feel Mew's obviously weak emotions when he spoke. Obviously, daytime is not a very good thing for the ghost Mew. Although the whole body of Mew is covered by clothes and the sun cannot reach him, walking in the sun is also very dangerous. Mikomo didn't know that Mew, a ghost, could bathe in the sun, so she was always worried about walking with Mew in the daytime. If you visit at night, I'm afraid it will scare the other party. Mew shook her head. A ghost, visiting at night, I am afraid that anyone who encounters it will find it difficult to accept. Okay. Mikomo muttered, knowing that it would be unreasonable for a ghost to visit someone's house at night. I have roughly investigated the place where Tanjiro lives before, and climbed several mountains, and finally came to the mountain range near the forest where Tanjiro lives. Hey, are you going into the mountains? A nearby resident shouted to stop Mew. Yes. Mikomo turned her head back, showing a sweet smile. I advise you not to go into the mountains. Recently, giant bears have appeared in the mountains. It is very dangerous. Several people have died. It's okay, don't worry, we are very good. Mikomo raised the sword in his hand and spoke confidently. Seeing that Mew and Mikomo did not listen, others stopped persuading them. After all, what should be said has already been said. If you really want to seek death, it is your own business. The two continued to walk on the rugged mountain road. Mew, there are giant bears in the forest, it's very dangerous. Mikomo tilted his head and looked at Mew. Didn't you just say that you are very powerful? He couldn't help but looked up and looked at Mikomo with some surprise. Mikomo is very powerful, but Mikomo is a girl. Mikomo blinked. Mew was taken aback. Is there any relationship between the two? Sure enough, Miss Shinobu is right. You are really a big fool. Mikomo told you that she is a girl. Mew scratched her head, but didn't understand. Fool. Mikomo muttered, bouncing ahead with his little hands behind his back. Looking at the back of the slender girl bouncing in front of her, Mew's golden eyes flickered. Did she really pick up Mikomo? Some are not confident. After all, his technique of teasing girls is actually very bad. It's just a very straight guy telling some bad love words in that world. Mew didn't know that in that world's rotten street love words, in this rather closed and conservative world, the impact brought by them is not just simple words. In that world, few people would take these words seriously. But in this world, these words can easily be taken seriously. What's more, there is no woman who doesn't like sweet talk. What's more, it was sweet words from a ghost. After a long time, you will always be immersed in sugar-coated cannonballs. When Mew was thinking secretly, Mikomo, who was bouncing in front, suddenly turned his head and looked at him. Stupid, I mean, if the giant bear comes, will Mew protect Mikomo? Mew was taken aback, as if he felt something faintly. Feelings may represent some kind of commitment. For a man, promises like this are the most difficult thing for Sha Nuo to take lightly. Especially for a girl whose eyes are all about you. I heard that bear paws are delicious, he pouted to himself and said. Forehead. Mikomo was stunned, then laughed and cursed. Mew, you were really a glutton. Talking. The girl's eyes consciously bent into a beautiful crescent shape. She was bouncing and walking in front of her with her little hands clasped. The rough mountain road didn't seem to have any effect on the girl, she always hopped around dexterously like a deer. As for me, but Mikomo, how could I let Mew protect me? In the future, I will protect you. How about it? The girl's voice was as clear as a lark's, but the ghost behind her couldn't help but stop. Seeing the girl pretending not to care at all, a complex look appeared in the golden pupils. Don't forget, I'm a ghost, you silly girl. He stepped forward and patted Mikomo on the head lightly. You are the one who aspires to become a ghost killer in the future. How can you say silly things about protecting ghosts? It hurts. Makomo covered his head, glared at Sumyu angrily, and grabbed Suemyu's hand. You bullied Makomo again, and Makomo will bite you to death. Saying that, the white and tender teeth bit Suemyu's hand at once. In fact, the bite was not painful. Moreover, with the ghost's healing ability, even if the whole palm was bitten off, it would heal immediately. Shui stopped unknowingly, and the boy wearing the bamboo hat stopped unknowingly. In the anime, the House of Memory also comes into view. Arrived. Sumyu turned her head and said to Makomo, who was still blushing beside her. Is this what Mew said, the place where the hermit lives? Makomo looked at the dilapidated house in front of him. His eyes were full of curiosity. That hermit's life seems a bit poor. Let's go. Sumyu patted Makomo on the head and walked forward first. Makomo also hurriedly followed. Kamado Kuiji, who was sweeping the snow in the yard, stopped what she was doing and looked curiously at the two men with weapons at their waists, with a hint of vigilance in their eyes. After all, in this era, the government is very strict about weapons control, and many people who go out with weapons like this are RRF. When he reached the door, Sumyu stopped in time. Makomo also tilted his head and looked at Kamado Kuiji. Is this the hermit mentioned by Mew? It feels like a very gentle woman, not as powerful as imagined. Hello, who are you? Kamado Kuiji looked at Sumyu and Makomo with some doubts. They looked like just teenagers, which made her vigilance drop a lot. My name is Sumyu, her name is Makomo, and we are here to visit Mr. Tanjiro. Sumyu bent slightly and said respectfully, visiting the husband? Kamado-e's eyes are full of doubts. She has never met these two people before. Moreover, Tanjiro has been bedridden almost all these years and rarely communicates with the outside world. She doesn't know what these two people are doing when they visit her husband. Although he was somewhat puzzled, Kamado Kuiji still nodded and said, please, but my husband has been in poor health. Thanks. Sumyu and Makomo couldn't help but bow down to express their gratitude. In the room, Kamado Hanako and Kamado Shigeru are playing, laughing cheerfully from time to time. As Sumyu and Makomo stepped into the room, Kamado Hanako and Kamado Shigeru couldn't help but look at them with curiosity in their eyes. Big brother, Sister Yin's son. Although they didn't know Sumyu and Makomo, Hanako and Mao still yelled at the guests sweetly. Hello, this is a gift for you. Makomo bent his crescent-like eyes, and took out a small bag of kope candy from his pocket. Thank you, sister. Hanako and Mao shouted happily. 2. Please drink tea. Kamado Kuiji also came over with tea. Just seeing the attitude of these two people towards Hanako and Shigeru, made her a lot less vigilant towards them. Husband hasn't woken up yet, maybe 2 sessions. Kamado Aoiji slightly apologized. It's okay. Sumyu shook his head and didn't care, now his time is not urgent. He took a sip of the tea handed by Kamado Kuiji, and felt that the craftsmanship of making tea should not be good, but it is better than the high-quality mountain spring water. The tea is picked in the mountains, and, with a girl aromatic, but also quite tasty. Where do you two come from? Kamado Eiji sat aside and asked. I'm from Shawu Mountain, and I've studied under ice scale recently. Makomo answered naturally, and then tilted her head to look at Sumyu. In fact, she was also quite curious about where Sumyu came from. I'm from a place called the Blue Planet. Sumyu said something casually. Blue Planet. Makomo tilted his head, feeling that this is really a very strange place name. It should be a very far away place. In the future, he must check carefully. Where is this place? If he has time, he must visit Mu's. What is hometown like? Hearing the two people's answers, Kamado Kuiji became even more puzzled. It is certain that the two came from a faraway place, Sha Wushan. She had heard of it faintly, and Blue Planet, she had never heard of it. What is certain is that Tanjiro should have never set foot in these places, and why did those two people find their husbands? Cough cough. There was a coughing sound. It was Kamado Tanjiro who woke up and walked this way with some difficulty. Kamado Aoi stood up hurriedly, supported Tanjiro. Why didn't you tell me when you woke up? Nothing. Kamado Tanjiro glanced at Kamado Eiji tenderly, and then his eyes fell on Sumyu and Makomo. He also heard the conversation just now, and he was also a little curious about what these two people did when they visited him. After all, in his impression, he had never seen these two people before. Mr. Tanjiro, hello. Sumyu hurriedly stood up and spoke respectfully. Mr. Tanjiro, hello. Makomo also stood up following Suemyu's movements, and said respectfully. Hi there. Kamado Tanjiro nodded weakly, but the doubts in his eyes became deeper and deeper. With the support of Kamado Aoi, Kamado Tanjiro sat down on a chair and looked at Sumiu and Makomo strangely. I don't know. What do you two want me for? Sumiu looked hesitantly at Kamado Hanako, who poked out her small head from behind Kamado Iji, and Kamado Shigeru, who was not far away. It's okay. There is nothing to hide, please say. Kamado Tanjiro seemed to see Suemiu's hesitation, and he spoke indifferently. Mr. Tanjiro thinks there are ghosts in this world? Seeing this, Sumiu didn't hesitate, and immediately spoke. As his voice fell, the room fell silent for an instant, and Hanako and Mao, who were still a little playful, couldn't help hiding in their mother's arms. Kamado Tanjiro also frowned. Deep down in his heart, Kamado Tanjiro does not believe in ghosts. After all, he has never seen ghosts, but the things passed down from his ancestors tell him that there are ghosts in this world. Therefore, he is contradictory in his perception of ghosts. What do you mean by that? Kamado Tanjiro frowned. I found some records from ancient things, about hundreds of years ago, during the Warring States period, some records of Ji Guo Yuan Yi. Ji Guo Yuan 1. Kamado Tanjiro's pupils tightened involuntarily. Naturally, it is impossible for Kamado Tanjiro not to have heard of this name. The Kamado family has always been the inheritor of the will of Ji Guo Yuan, and the Kamado family has also been shouldering the task of inheriting the Nichiren flower paper earrings and the breath of God of Fire Kagura, left by Ji Guo Yuan. What does what you said have anything to do with ghosts? Kamado Tanjiro narrowed his eyes unconsciously, his frail body exuded a powerful aura faintly. Under the shroud of this powerful aura, people seem to see a fierce tiger that suddenly wakes up and chooses to eat. Under the oppression of this powerful aura, Makomo's complexion involuntarily turned pale, and his little hand involuntarily pressed the hilt of his sword. Sumiu looked very calm, but said quietly, what I want to say is that hundreds of years ago, Ji Guo Yuan once pushed the ghost ancestor Kibutsuji Muzan into a desperate situation, and even almost killed him. The other party is dead. It's just that with the death of Ji Guo Yuan Yi, Kibutsuji Muzan made a comeback. Once, everything related to Ji Guo Yuan Yi was wiped out by him. Now, Gui Wukan has set his sights on Kamado Tankichi, who was once Ji Guo Yuan's best friend. Hoo-hoo. Kamado Tanjiro's breathing seemed to become a little short all of a sudden. Kamado Tankichi, that's the ancestor of the Kamado family, a close friend of the former swordsman Sukuni Anichi who used to breathe the sun, and they are the descendants of Kamado Tankichi. What I want to say is very simple, your family. Followed. He took a sip of tea and spoke slowly. What I want to say is very simple, your family. Follow me. Very light words, accompanied by Suemiu's words, the whole room suddenly fell into an incomparable silence. Faintly, as if a gust of cold wind was blowing on everyone's bodies, they trembled involuntarily. I don't know when, the wind and snow outside began to fall again. What nonsense are you talking about? Kamado Kuiji at the side couldn't help shouting. These two people came here to scare them because of their sudden visit. Facing Kamado Iji's angry voice, Sumiu was silent, just looked at Kamado Tanjiro silently. He believed that the other party should understand. After all, the Kamado family, as the inheritors of the will of Ji Kunyuan, has always shouldered the task of inheriting the Nichiren flower paper earrings and the breath of God of Fire Kagura, left by Ji Kunyuan. It is impossible for an inheritor to know nothing. If Kamado Tanjiro doesn't understand anything, in the anime, Tanjiro's memories of his father Tanjiro will not mention the words, Tanjiro, remember to breathe, that Kamado Tanjiro always said to him. Kamado Tanjiro would not have hung a rope with bells around his home 10 days before his death when he was already terminally ill. Relying on these bells, he let out a bird that was always on the snowy moonlit night that night. A giant bear raging nearby. He chopped off the bear's head with just one axe, and explained to Tanjiro the principle of the transparent world he had mastered, and hoped that Tanjiro could understand it carefully. Obviously, at that time, Kamado Tanjiro should have realized something, or Kamado Tanjiro should have realized something a long time ago, but everything is still relatively vague and not specific. After all, Kamado Tanjiro is not an ordinary person, he is the only person other than the Demon Slayer squad who has mastered the transparent world, and he may also be the only person who has mastered the stripe, besides the Demon Slayer squad. Not a simple ordinary person. Call. Taking a deep breath, Kamado Tanjiro calmed down after the initial shock. Sunflower branch. Kamado Tanjiro glanced at his wife. Ait. Kamado Aoi wanted to say a few more words, but Kamado Tanjiro stared at him, so he stopped talking. The breath on your body is very similar to the person who passed by on the journey last night. Kamado Tanjiro squinted at Sumiyu. Although he doesn't know martial arts and can't fully display the strength of the through the world, his sensitivity to the outside world is not weak. Last night, he felt puzzled by the aura of the person who came to visit. At that time, he was very vigilant for a while. After all, he felt that the opponent's strength was very strong. However, it seems that the other party is really just a passing traveler. So, he didn't think too much about it. Now, Sumiyu in front of him has the same aura as that person last night. He couldn't help but associate them together. It's just that Suemyu's breath is obviously much weaker than the breath given to him by the person last night. The person who came to visit last night, and his breath is very similar to mine. Sumiyu murmured in a low voice. Similar to his breath? The breath of ghosts? Could it be? Kibutsuji Muzan. Kibutsuji Muzan comes to mind almost subconsciously. As for why Kibutsuji Muzan didn't do anything, I'm afraid, I'm also worried. He couldn't help looking at Kamado Tanjiro, who looked extremely weak in front of him, especially at the stripe on his head. Obviously, he was concerned about Kamado Tanjiro in front of him. After all, this is a dappled person. In this world, there are very few people who can open their stripes, not to mention, this is the person who inherited the breath of the sun, and opened their stripes. Moreover, with Kibutsuji Muzan's cautious character, he must not dare to act rashly. It's just that I didn't expect Kibutsuji Muzan to follow the Kamado family so early. Compared with his knowledge of Demon Slayer's plot, Kibutsuji Muzan is obviously a lot more cautious than he expected. In the anime, Muzan waited patiently until Kamado discovered Wang Lang's death several years before doing it. Can you tell me about the so-called ghost? Kamado Tanjiro stared at Sumiyu. Sumiyu nodded. Ghosts do exist in this world. Ghosts will appear after nightfall, and they eat people. After listening to Kamado Tanjiro, he nodded his head slightly, feeling more worried. Today, the current situation can be said to be very unfavorable for the Kamado family. If so, the Kamado family is really being targeted by ghosts. How should we solve it? With his current physical condition, how long can he protect the Kamado family? If he is gone, who can he count on? Is the gentle wife Kamado Iji, or the eldest son Kamado Tanjiro? Or the eldest daughter Kamado Nezuko? Lifting his head, he looked at Sumiyu. It's not just because of this, is it? Just tell them the Kamado family, they are being targeted by ghosts? Of course not. His eyes unconsciously fell on the Kamado family. Unfortunately, he has not seen Kamado Tanjiro, the male protagonist of Demon Slayer, nor Kamado Nezuko, the female character he liked very much on the screen. However, what happens after the united anime in the anime, after the Kamado family lost the mainstay of Kamado Tanjiro? Although life was very difficult, they have been working hard. As the eldest son, Tanjiro worked hard to shoulder the burden of being a family. I worked very hard, and lived a life that was difficult but warm. Just, sadly, when happiness is destroyed, always with the smell of blood. It was a silent tragedy. The once perfect family has been separated. He doesn't like tragedies, does he? So, naturally, he doesn't just tell the Kamado family that they are being targeted by ghosts and wants to help each other. Apart from not liking tragedies, what he wants more is of course something about the Kamado clan and about that swordsman. Breath of the sun and the principle of penetrating the world that Kamado Tanlang now grasps. I came here mainly to learn from Mr. Tanjiro about the God of Fire Kagura dance that has been passed down by the Kamado clan and the method of penetrating the world that Mr. Tanjiro has now mastered. He stated his purpose very frankly. Silence, a long silence. During this silent time, no one knew what Kamado Tanjiro was thinking. At this moment, the room was surprisingly silent. For a long time, Kamado Tanjiro opened his eyes. You should be the same as the person who appeared last night, right? Based on a certain attribute, it should indeed be regarded as the same type, but I don't think that I am in the same type as him. Sumiyu said calmly. She didn't deny anything, and she didn't want to lie. Then, can you tell me, how should I believe what you say, or how should I believe you? How can you make me believe you, and use to make me willing to choose the inheritance and the will to you? Sumiyu was slightly silent. Obviously, if he wanted to obtain the principle of breath of the sun, and penetrate the world, he had to convince Kamado Tanjiro-ji. In other words, enough reasons are needed. After a long time, he looked at Kamado Tanjiro and said seriously, I can't make you believe everything I said, and likewise, I can't make you believe me, and I can't make you willing to give me what Kamado has inherited. Because how these things are chosen, those are all up to you. These are all your will, your wishes, I have no right to intervene, and I will not intervene. With me, you can choose to refuse, choose to accept. I accept your choice, but with Kibutsuji Muzan, you don't have a choice. Su Mu didn't say much, but told Kamado Tanjiro the most real situation at the moment, believing that the other party would choose his own choice. These are all based on Kamado Tanjiro's own choice. If he is willing, he is naturally happy. If he is unwilling, although he is sad, he will not force it. The wind outside the house seemed to be getting stronger at this moment, and it kept beating the windows, making a woo-woo sound. But in the room, it was extremely silent. Even said, it was dull. Everyone is almost holding their breath deliberately. After a long time, Kamado Tanjiro raised his head, with a wry smile on his pale face. Actually, I have no choice at all, don't I? From the very beginning, he had no choice, unless he wanted to watch his wife, his son, and his daughter being targeted by ghosts. However, this is obviously impossible. In fact, when Su Mu gave him a choice, he had already made the choice for him, didn't he? Su Mu smiled, and a smile could not help but appear on the corner of her mouth. Thanks for your trust. Su Mu bent down and expressed his thanks.
Kamado Tanjiro shook his head. I'm not for you, I'm just for my family.
Similarly, I am not here specifically to help you. I also have my purpose, which is for the penetrating world in the breath of the sun that you have mastered. Su Mu also shook her head. In fact, he didn't expect Kamado Tanjiro to believe his words so easily at first. In fact, he had already given up his plan to spend a certain amount of time here. He was already prepared to get nothing from Kamado Tanjiro. He has even set his target on Tanjiro's son Tanjiro. After all, no matter what, regarding the inheritance of the Kamado clan, Kamado Tanjiro will always give it to his son Kamado Tanjiro, right? Now, tell me, what should we do? Kamado Tanjiro smiled bitterly. Here, Kibutsuji Muzan has been eyeing, the first thing to do is to move. Move place. Kamado Tanjiro nodded. I'll let Aoiji arrange it, and they will move with the children. Do not, Su Mu shook her head. Including you, we have to leave together. Su Mu said earnestly, he will never forget Kamado Tanjiro's top combat power, after all, he is the one who has mastered the penetrating world and stripes. Although his combat ability may be greatly reduced because he does not know swordsmanship, but the combat power it can display, except for the rock pillar Himejima Kiyome, almost surpasses most of the pillars in the current Demon Slayer squad. If Kamado Tanjiro is allowed to practice swordsmanship specifically, I am afraid that Yenju Himejima Kiyome may not be Kamado Tanjiro's opponent. Hearing Su Mu's words, Kamado Tanjiro couldn't help but shook his head bitterly. I'm afraid my body can't support me to travel far. For his own body, Kamado Tanjiro really knows too well. He already feels that his body is getting worse and worse. I am afraid that he will not live for long. Su Mu shook her head. I will find a way to find someone to help with treatment. It's useless. The nearby doctors have seen it, but they are helpless. It's not like he hasn't seen a doctor these years. That's because those people's medical skills are not strong enough. Su Mu said very plainly, and he roughly guessed the cause of Kamado Tanjiro's stubborn illness. If his guess is correct, the reason for Kamado Tanjiro's so-called stubborn illness may be because he turned on the stripe. You must know that when the stripes are turned on, the body temperature needs to reach 39 degrees, and the heart rate is above 200 times. Once this is done, the burden on the body is quite huge. The opponent's chronic illness should be caused by turning on the stripe, coupled with the lack of targeted rest, so the physical condition is getting worse and worse. And how does this kind of remote doctor understand these things? And how to propose targeted treatment methods? But now, don't worry, he now knows a very powerful doctor, and he has also developed a drug that turns people into ghosts. Even if it is really impossible, Tamayo can give Kamado Tanjiro the medicine to become a ghost. Is there really someone who can heal your husband well? The eyes of Kamado Iji beside him couldn't help but brighten up. I dare not guarantee it, but at least there is a 70% possibility. Su Mu seriously said, Tamayo's medical skills can be said to be the top of the world. After all, it has reached the point where it can turn people into ghosts, which is enough to see how powerful Tamayo's medical skills are. Then, Mr. Trouble must help your husband. Kamado Iji suddenly fell to his knees. If possible, who would want the pillar of his family to fall down? Even if there is only a slight chance, you must desperately grasp it. Boom. The door of the room was knocked open at this moment, and a red-haired boy ran in excitedly. He just heard outside the door that someone had the ability to treat his father. Who? Who can cure father? Tanjiro broke into the room with a look of excitement. Just like her mother, she immediately knelt in front of Sumiyu. Please, sir, you must help cure father. As long as you can cure father, you can ask Tanjiro to do anything. Nezuko didn't hear it. She came home after Tanjiro, but she was smart and saw the situation in front of her, and immediately understood what was going on. Almost without saying a word, he immediately knelt down. Mister, please help me and treat my father. Looking at the Kanao family who knelt down in front of him suddenly, Sumiyu also smiled wryly. Helping everyone up, looking at the begging eyes of everyone, I was really touched by such a family. Don't worry, I can do what I can, and I will definitely do it. He said seriously. Thanks. Kanao Tanjiro bent down again. No matter what the final result is, Mr. is willing to help save my father, because of Tanjiro's kindness, and I will definitely repay Mr.'s kindness. Kanao Tanjiro looked at Sumiyu seriously. The boy's eyes were so determined. Next to him, Makomo, who had been silent all the time, silently looked at the past in front of him, and his eyes fell on Sumiyu unconsciously. The ghost, Miu, seems to be more popular than her. He also looked at the red-haired boy who wanted to repay Sumiyu. He wondered if this red-haired boy would fulfill his promise and work hard to repay Miu, after he knew that Miu was a ghost. And also Makomo's eyes fell on Nezuko's body at once. This girl has her hair in a bun, with loose buns hanging beside her delicate melon-seeded face, and her high nose bridge is so delicate. Wearing a pink kimono. Elegant and pure yet with an inexplicable cuteness, it has a charm that people can't take their eyes off. This girl is surprisingly good-looking. Unconsciously, Makomo narrowed her eyes slightly beautifully, forming a beautiful gap, always feeling that this woman would be her lifelong enemy. A very terrifying enemy. Kuiji, take the children out for a while. I have some things to discuss with this gentleman. Kanao Tanjiro said to Aoi next to him. Kanao Aoi nodded, and together with Nezuko, took the children away. Tanjiro was about to leave, but was stopped by Kanao Shilong. As the eldest son of the family, Tanjiro is the pillar of the family in the future, and he will bear the burden and responsibility of the family. He needs to know this. The room was silent, only Kanao Tanjiro, Makomo, and Sumiyu. More precisely, 3 people and 1 ghost. Kanao Tanjiro took a cup of tea from his son, took a sip, and looked at Sumiyu. Are you a ghost too? It was a very clear question, or rather it had already been guessed. Beside, Tanjiro listened to his father's words, his body trembled involuntarily, and he raised his head in horror. If his father's calmness hadn't infected him, he might have already run away. Sumiyu nodded. There is really no need to hide this point, and there is no need to hide it. Earlier, Kanao Tanjiro mentioned that he had the same aura as the traveler who visited his home last night, and the other party probably had already guessed. It's just that everything is just speculation and not very sure. Sumiyu also took off the hat on her head. In Kanao Tanjiro's prediction, there may be a ferocious face under the bamboo hat. But obviously not. It was a pale, but very handsome young man's face, with black hair hanging down his shoulders, blowing in the wind. There was a sense of elegance. The ghost horns on the head are also slightly glowing, and the golden eyes hidden in the pupils are sharp. Seeing the appearance of the ghost, Kanao Tanjiro was slightly startled, and murmured in a voice only he could hear, "Is this a ghost?" The ghost doesn't seem very vicious. Tanjiro next to him couldn't help but speak. Sumiyu raised his eyes and looked at Tanjiro, feeling a little funny that this Kanao Tanjiro, who was almost wiped out by ghosts in the future, would say such words at this moment. However, thinking about it, it seems normal again. Although there are legends about evil spirits eating people in this world, to ordinary people, they are just legends after all. Compared with human beings swallowed by ghosts, more human beings may die of accidents every year. Although there are ghosts in this world, there are not many real ghosts. After all, that ghost Kibutsuji Muzan is too cautious, and the ghosts he creates are not too many. Note the same. In addition, the ghost killing team has always been committed to slaying ghosts, so among the people, few people can actually see ghosts. Possibly, many people will never be able to see ghosts in their entire lives. The cognition of ghosts is naturally still in the imagination. It is natural to recognize the situation of seeing ghosts for the first time and realize that all ghosts are like this. It is necessary to break Tanjiro's perception of ghosts. Staring at Tanjiro with golden eyes, he asked a simple question. Don't you think ghosts are evil? Sir doesn't seem to be vicious. Tanjiro scratched his head. But, what if I, a ghost, eat people? The very calm words made the room seem to be gloomy in an instant. Even if it felt that Sumiu was joking, Kamado Tanjiro's body couldn't help but tense, let alone Kamado Tanjiro, who was still a child. Tanjiro's complexion also turned pale. If the ghost in front of me really eats people. Some dare not imagine, a little scared, but at the same time, they clenched their fists unconsciously, and there was a touch of determination in their eyes. He squeezed his fists, and a look of determination appeared in his eyes. It really is worthy of being the protagonist, this characterization. Seeing Kamado Tanjiro, who quickly became calm and made a decision, Sumiu couldn't help but sigh. However, as the eldest son of the family, this is what Kamado Tanjiro has to face and bear. After all, behind him, there is something he desperately wants to protect. Please sir, teach me. Tanjiro lowered his head slightly. Obviously, Tanjiro is not a fool. He can clearly feel that the ghost in front of him has no malice towards the Kamado family, and he can feel 10 touches of warm kindness from his breath. Sumiu looked at Tanjiro and shook his head. It's not me who taught you, but your father. Tanjiro froze for a moment, and couldn't help looking at his father. In Tanjiro's impression, his father has always been a seriously ill person. Even if he walks normally, he needs someone to help him. Only when he prayed for safety to Master Vulcan every year and offered dances, the sick father would behave unusually. In fact, your father is stronger than you imagined, at least, many times stronger than me now. He looked seriously at Kamado Tanjiro, the only ordinary person who has mastered the transparent world, besides the Demon Slayer team, and he is also one of the few people in this world who can activate the stripe. Even if this person is seriously ill, even if he doesn't know swordsmanship, the strength he can display will never be inferior to any pillar, except Yenju Hamejima Kiyome. Tanjiro couldn't help but look at his father. Mr. Tanjiro, please start teaching me now. He looked at Kamado Tanjiro. It is good. Kamado Tanjiro nodded, and at the same time, patted his son on the head. You should also learn it seriously. After all, as the eldest son of the family, in the future, he will inherit the Nichiren floral paper earrings and the God of Fire, left by that adult. Kagura, the task of breathing is entrusted to you. Kamado Tanjiro began to talk about his understanding of the transparent world, and the second type of Kagura Mai, the god of transformation. Sumiu listened carefully, her golden eyes shone slightly. Time passed slowly, and the sun gradually began to set. Night is coming. Sumiu stood up, looked at the tired Kamado Tanjiro, bowed respectfully. Thank you. Kamado Tanjiro waved his hands weakly. Sumiu didn't say anything, just opened the window. The setting sun began to fall slowly, and faintly, the moonlight began to emerge. The night is coming. Today, the area around here has long been monitored by Kibutsuji Muzan, and staying here will only attract the attention of Muzan. If Kibutsuji Muzan is really made aware of his arrival, no matter how cautious Kibutsuji Muzan is, he will not be indifferent. I can only come here during the day tomorrow. Walk slowly on the road. Kamado Kuiji waved goodbye at the door. Okay. Sumiu nodded, and at the same time said to Kamado Tanjiro. For a while, try to keep the old habits. It is good. Kamado Tanjiro nodded. Seeing this, Sumiu also pulled Susmin to leave. Gentlemen. A crisp sound sounded. Sumiu couldn't help but look back. It was Nezuko who came over, slightly surprised. This is for big brother and sister to eat on the way. The small hand that Nezuko was holding was loosened, and it was a bunch of berries. In another world, there is a very sweet fruit called hawthorn. Nezuko looked at Sumiu and Makomo with her fair face. The girl's eyes were innocent, and she was wearing the purest smile. It is good. Sumiu took the fruit and rubbed it on Nezuko's little head by the way. Nezuko was stunned for a moment. A slight blush appeared on his small face. Apparently he did not expect Sumiu to make such a move. Makomo next to him was obviously a bit apprehensive, but he still patiently explained to Sumiu, a villain. He is always like this, always touching the little heads of pretty girls. I see, sister. Nezuko whispered begging. The sun was setting. At the time of the devil. As night approached, those who went out also returned home. In this remote area, there are very few people walking at night, or almost none. Sumiu and Makomo did not go far, but climbed several peaks, far away from the mountain where Kamado's family lives. Unknowingly, the sun completely set and lit up. Why don't you stay at Kamado's house? Standing on the top of the mountain, Makomo looked up at Sumiu with some doubts. Sumiu turned her head, looked at the really lonely and thin clothes, and very consciously put the clothes covering her body on Makomo. At night, he will not need to wear heavy clothes to block the sunlight from the day. As for why I didn't stay at Kamado's house, the reason is very simple. The nearby area has long been monitored by Kibutsuji Muzan's ghosts. If I stay at night, I can't escape the eyes of those ghosts. He pointed his finger to the distance. Can you feel the breath of ghosts nearby? Makomo's beautiful eyes unconsciously looked in the direction of Suemu's finger. It was pitch black and he couldn't see anything. If it was in the past, maybe I wouldn't feel anything, but Suemu felt it carefully and felt it in that direction, and indeed, I felt a strange breath. Everything here has long been mastered by Kibutsuji Muzan, he said softly. For Kibutsuji Muzan, he never wants to see anything out of his control. For the wary Kibutsuji Muzan, he had already set up a lot of surveillance in the vicinity. It can be said that the Kamado family at night is almost completely under the supervision of these ghosts, and there are almost no secrets. Any approach of ghosts or ghost-killing teams will cause these ghosts to pay great attention. I see. Makomo nodded. But at this time, Suemu looked at Makomo with serious eyes. Makomo, let's start. Okay. Makomo nodded. The necessary daily sparring between the two is almost unavoidable. However, with the improvement of his strength, the gap between the two is getting bigger and bigger. From the very beginning in Shawu Mountain, they can barely communicate with each other and make progress with each other. Now, every time they practice each other, it is almost above Suemu's advice to Zhenzang. Let him, a ghost, teach Makomo how to deal with ghosts and how to kill ghosts. I'm afraid, in terms of dealing with ghosts, none of the members of the ghost killing squad have experience with Makomo. The slim figure of the girl danced on the top of the mountain, avoiding the attack from Suemu. This is her greatest advantage. Even the current Suemu is not as fast as her. She also kept in mind Suemu's lesson to herself. Speed as one's own advantage. One must firmly grasp one's own advantage and make the best use of one's own advantage. She seriously remembers this point. When fighting, she doesn't love to fight, and every time she tastes it, she will never let her opponent catch her. Find the right opportunity to give the opponent a fatal blow. Choke. The girl gave a soft drink, breath of water shape of situation, hitting the tide. The girl's figure was slender, and she moved in an instant, attacking Suemu in multiple stages like a tide. Handball. At some point, 2 more handballs appeared in Suemu's hands. In an instant, the handball was thrown and went towards Makomo like a cannonball. Crack. The beautiful sword shadow flashed across, and the 2 handballs were cut into 2 by Makomo with the water breath CG shape. Hit the tide. But it was not easy. The impact of the handball was comparable to that of a cannonball, which made her, who was already weak in strength, feel a burst of numbness in her arm. But looking up, looking at the sky, densely packed, there are still 8 handballs. The girl let out a scream, like a fertilized sparrow, flapping its wings in a panic. A series of handballs almost brushed against the girl's side and exploded. Boom. The girl seems to be dancing on the tip of a knife. Relying on her unique speed advantage, she can always dodge the handball attack dangerously every time. It's just that the Hongji arrow, attached to these handballs, makes these handballs seem to have the ability to track. No matter how much I dodge, these handballs can always easily track my position. The ability to manipulate handballs from Susumaru, the ghost of handball, and the ability of Yahaba, the ghost of arrow pattern, to control the arrow of Hongji. Panting, not coming, not coming. The girl bent over, panting heavily. Suemu's figure fell and stood by her side. Today is so fast. After the words fell, a cold sword light attacked, and the girl suddenly drew out the sword. Breath of water 7 shapes, Shizuku ripple sting. A sword stabs from an inclined surface, and the sword thrusts along a straight line or curve, just like ripples appearing on the water. This is the fastest stabbing technique of all sword types of water breath. Combined with Makomo's speed, the cold sword light almost came to Suemu's side in the blink of an eye. Choke. Draw sword cut. A faster sword slashed out, but the second strike came first, and it slashed at the edge of the incoming sword. Intense explosion like sparks burst out from the clash of the 2 swords, brilliant like fireworks. These days, Suemu has never practiced anything else. Day after day, he only continues to shoot swords. Other sword moves may be much slower than Makomo in terms of speed, not to mention the fastest, 7 type. Shizuku ripple thrust in breath of water. But only draw sword cut in this blow, he will never lose to Makomo, and even surpass him. The drawn sword that contained his power slashed at Makomo's Nichiren blades. A huge force surged in, directly numbing Makoto's body, and the Nichiren blades in his hand were also knocked out long ago. The whole person staggered back. Su Emu's figure followed, just when Makomo thought Su Mu would come to pull her. Snapped. No, Su kicked her little butt instead. Makomo's slender figure fell instantly. Hey hey hey. Makomo got scared, and stared at Su Mu angrily. You don't talk about martial arts, sneak attack, are you a man? Su Mu couldn't help but rolled her eyes. It's you who didn't talk about martial arts first, and you obviously couldn't explain it, and you still attacked me. I'm a woman. What's the matter if I don't talk about martial arts? What's the matter? Are you a woman? Are you a woman? Makomo glared at Su Mu. I'm a ghost. What's the matter if you don't talk about wood? What's the matter? Are you a ghost? Su Mu shrugged his shoulders, and immediately put the little girl Makomo to death. Such a small Makomo, he can handle it to death. Bah, bah, bah. Makomo grumbled and ran in front of Su Mu, clenching his small fists, and punched this nasty ghost hard. She doesn't have the prestige of a female knight at all. On the contrary, I lost the quarrel with my husband and started to piss off. Is there anyone who can reason with a girl? This ghost is really not a ghost. Other boys talk about feelings with girls, you reason with girls. After the daily sparring, today, Su Mu will start to do what he has to do. Practice the God of Fire Kagura dance, from Kamado Tanjiro. That is practice the breath of the day.